We go ahead and start the recording.
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to December. This is arguably the nicest day of December in the history of Nashville outside. So,
I want to begin the meeting by apologizing for telling you look like Santa Claus this morning.
I'm just getting into character for Christmas. We're going to begin this meeting of the Engineers Committee by getting a quick call to order by our chairman, and then I will take roll and we'll get right into the agenda. Mr. Chairman? Can't hear you.
Call to order.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Campbell? Everyone needs to make sure their mic's not on mute.
Sorry, I got you. Thought it was just too far away.
Have you take a month off and y'all forget how to?
Well, you know.
All right, Mr. Campbell, present.
Present.
Okay, Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. Heathcote.
I'm right here.
Still can't hear you.
See?
I am right here.
It didn't light up there, Chief.
I'll hold it. It's still not lighting up.
There you go.
Now, I am right here.
Mr. King.
Here.
And Mr. Barrett.
Here.
All right, let's start off with a little levity this morning. Okay, so we're going to get right into the agenda. Let me pull up my agenda real quick. All right, we have one application for review. That application, excuse me for a second, is Mr. Bowacki. Does anybody remember who initially called for review on that? Mr. Campbell?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Well, I'll turn it over to you then.
Very good. He's missing 2 of 3 classes, physics, and let me see here. Sorry. I'll get to chemistry, biology, physics. He's missing 2 of those 3. He has a waiver request in his file, and the waiver request was that he had that while he was in a high school class, if I remember right. I'm trying to find the letter, flipping through here.
Traffic engineer from Georgia.
Yes, sir. Okay. And so I said that we need to discuss it because we have had that situation before where we've had somebody claim high school credit. They said, oh, we had those classes in high school, and we've denied those because there's no way to verify from a curricula standpoint that those are legitimate classes. And so I just wanted to have the board weigh in on that and not try to make that decision.
Did he applicant college credit for those classes?
According to the curricular evaluation, he's missing 2 of those 3. The NCAA
because that is possible, but you take a placement test and you actually receive the credit for it. So
yeah, I don't think
that's the way it would be documented if properly. I mean,
yeah, the way he described it, and I'm trying to find his letter, was that it was part of his high school education. It wasn't like it was a AP test or something, that he took.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Yes, sir. I looked through there, Robert, and I also looked at our past meeting notes at some other applicants who were short science classes like that. And one thing we got a ruling on from Tony Glansdorf is that we do have the authority to look at a transcript and judge whether we think it's equal or not. The other thing we did was made some decisions where if the area of engineering the person was practicing was, if they were missing a biology class and they were a structural engineer, that we could take that into account, that wasn't key to public health, safety, and welfare. So we have that latitude just in the past. But I looked at the courses that he took and in college and then his graduate studies, but I think these were his bachelor's. And you guys would know more than I would about these courses, but he did have a wastewater treatment course, and he had a hydrology course. And, I don't know how much chemistry and biology that you get into when you do wastewater, take a wastewater course like that, or even hydrology, but felt like in traffic engineering, I was satisfied when I looked at his transcript that he would be a good applicant, health, safety, and welfare. He's got the education, the examination, and the experience. He had good references. And so all of those put together, I felt like the courses that he took would satisfy us, but I would yield to the civil engineers on the board who probably more aware of those courses than I am.
Anybody else?
Just quickly, the name of the applicant again, the one I've got in here is Mr. Edwards.
That's architectural. Yeah.
I forgot to hit the button. That's architectural. Mr. Is it Boaki? I don't mean any disrespect by the pronunciation, but this one was a late. It should have been in the SharePoint for everyone to see.
In Dr.
It is not.
Baku
I can try and get a PDF for you real quick, but do you have access to the SharePoint from where you are?
No, I do not.
Okay. Is Megan, are you on?
I am.
Okay, is there any way you have a PDF that you might be able to send to us real quick?
I do. Where should I send it?
You'll print it. Caleb will run and pick it up.
Okay, I gotcha.
1, 2, 3.
I don't need a copy.
1, 2, 3, 4. At least 5 copies.
5 copies. Okay, I will.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Ricky, can I ask again the more advanced civil engineering classes that you were talking about that he had taken? What were they?
Yeah, there was a wastewater treatment course and a hydrology course. Robert's got. I think you got the file open. I'm looking for it now. But Robert, were there any other ones that you think would be science related?
Yeah, well, and I think that was in his original degree, right?
Right. Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
That was, and so I assume those had gotten credit for. He was getting credit for something, engineering or whatever, with that original degree when they did the evaluation.
What about the advanced degree?
I'm trying to find that. I don't know. So For instance, UT, he's got transportation. Most of these are all transportation classes, traffic characteristics. Kansas. Is geometric design, highway safety, public transit. There were, I mean, there's no, and in his advanced degree, there's no chemistry or biology, whatever related to that.
Looking at his bachelor's degree out in anything that the things that might be science related, there's a engineering excuse me, geology, there's a soil and rock mechanics and environmental engineering and introduction to environmental hydrology, soil mechanics.
You said wastewater treatment,
Yeah, hydraulic engineering,
which would have both biology and
in
chemistry.
there. Environmental quality engineering. I don't know if that might have a little bit.
Yeah.
Wastewater treatment. Geotechnical engineering. I don't know if that might have any. Water resources engineering. Ground engineering. That looks like kind of the science-related courses.
Okay. Those are heavy science-related courses, and math, of course, but heavy science-related courses.
I didn't know. Looks like he's mainly in traffic engineering. If I don't know if you got into pavement, whether the biology or chemistry helps more than these courses that he took. With pavement.
Looks like he has 2 master's degrees. He's got a registered in Kansas. He got a University of Kansas master's degree in civil engineering. He's got a University of Tennessee master's in statistics. He's got a PhD from the University of Tennessee.
I would think that he's got sufficient education specific to engineering to be allowed to practice engineering.
Statistics might help with traffic engineering more than
With traffic
biology.
engineering, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Undergraduate degree, not ABET accredited, or what's the issue? I can't. I don't have
His
the file.
undergraduate's foreign degree, and it didn't have the.
Okay.
Yeah, they compared it, Steve, and they noted that he had the 32 hours in math and science, but of the 32 to meet the standards, you got to have 2 of 3 courses in either biology, physics, or chemistry, and they said that they didn't have those 2 of those sciences.
Was the foreign degree from someone that was in part of the Washington Accord?
Don't know.
Question. I didn't see anything about that in the application.
I do remember that discussion with Tony we had, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. So makes sense.
Robert, you willing to let it go? Or you want to have a vote?
I mean, if you two seems like you're in on it, and he's in on it. And the reason I didn't deny him, I just said we need to discuss it. And I said the reason we need to discuss it is he's not claiming, and I try to take people at their word when they write these waiver request letters. He's claiming that he had all these classes in high school, and we can't evaluate a high school transcript. It's just impossible to do. If he would have claimed, hey, I had these classes and I was in my other advanced degrees, then I might have looked at it differently. But he didn't do that. He said, I want you to give me credit based on my high school curricula. And that's why I wanted to discuss it, because we've had that same situation about, I want to say it was 2-3 meetings ago, and we denied somebody because they were claiming high school credit, and we said we can't do that. So since
They might not have had 2 masters and a PhD.
well, they may not have. I mean, you can get on me about quibbling on something like that, but I'm not. I'm just trying to be consistent with what this board's done. And,
Yeah, I understand.
and if we're going to put one person under that scrutiny, let's put the other person under that scrutiny too. So, I mean, if you guys are okay with it, then sign her up and let's go. All you need is 2 out of 3.
I think if high school education was all they had in those engineering areas, I would feel differently. Good.
I said to discuss it because we had that same situation a little bit ago and it didn't go over so well. So I wanted the wisdom of the board to look at it instead of just me.
I think that's a good call, Robert, and I agree with what you proposed to discuss it. I think it should be, and you're right. We've had that more than one time, in fact, in the past.
I'm good with it. One other factor we hadn't mentioned is I see a comedy applicant, and this may not be correct or not, but I see a comedy applicant a little differently than a initial exam applicant too. And if they're practicing in other states and have some experience, to me it gives comfort for our state that we're not compromising things. And even though this person doesn't have decades of experience like we sometimes like to see, they are, because of those advanced degrees, they have been out of their bachelor's program for quite a while. So I'm comfortable with it.
And apparently this person is practicing in the field where he's had advanced degrees.
I don't think he's practiced at all. I think he's been in academia most of the time. Is that right?
Well, he was just recently. I mean, he's a recent.
Oh, I mean, he did work for a company. I'm sorry. You're right.
His last stop is with, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess for the record, we've had a full discussion and decided that he's approved. Is that good?
We need a vote for that of the 3 voting members.
All you need is you just need 2 people to sign it.
I mean, we probably need to record the 2 of us approve.
Well, what we've done in the past is we have sent to a 3rd reviewing member for a tie break. In this instance, we could.
That was me.
Oh, have you already done
Probably.
so?
Well, I don't have that form. Usually we'll get the form to sign when we have these discussions, the review form. And
okay.
So.
Well, then we'll just go through that process, and we'll send. We'll have Megan. We'll send you.
I have not submitted the signed document, but you got 1 approval here.
Okay.
You got 1 approval and 1 question. I think if the voting members wanted to vote to yes or no, we could do it right now and not have to worry about sending information back out.
Okay, I'm happy to do it either way. So let's since we're all here, let's go ahead and put it to a vote.
Okay.
All right.
There's a motion on the table to approve the application of Mr. Boakey. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You got 2.
All right. We will inform the applicant.
Yeah, your mic is off.
Okay.
So it was unanimous.
We got 3.
Let the record show that
Your mic's off.
Now, let the record show that there were 3 votes entered, all yes.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, that you were a yes.
Yes, I thought it popped up, but that's not it.
All right. The record will reflect all 3. Okay, so we can move on down the list here. Let's see. Maria, do we have any potential laws, rules, or policy changes that we need to discuss right now?
No, the only thing that I will say is I provided you guys with the engineering definition that I took back from our last meeting, and that will be presented to the definitions committee this afternoon. I did not make any substantive changes on it. I met with Tony, and we just decided that, the language you all provided was pretty, to the point, and I didn't want to change technical terms. The only thing that was edited really was the formatting. And then I also just wanted to point out, I sent this to Casey and also Ashley with AIA. And I have not received comments back yet, just the timeline. They didn't have, with Thanksgiving and everything, they didn't have sufficient time to get back comments from their leadership. But we should be getting those back before our next meeting. So anyhow, if you guys have anything to say about it, if not, we'll just talk about it at the definitions committee.
I do have one question in it, maybe because I missed last time, not necessarily on definition, but going back to policy, law, rule, or whatever, we had some things that we were trying to get on the governor's packet. So where are we on that whole process?
I don't have an update from the administration on it. I kind of had to hand that off, and at that point was told they would, don't call us, we'll call you type thing. So I don't have any updates. I'm very sorry for that.
And whoever's listening or whatever, it's not, obviously we're in December right now, but the session does start in February or January, right? So if that's going to be carried forward, it would be good to let the engineering community know so that we can, because the worst thing to come into it is if we've not had some time to vet that in the community, so that you've got somebody out there that's dissatisfied or doesn't have enough information, and that starts rewriting all the things that we've done over all these years because they didn't understand something. And that's happened before. And I know legislation's messy, but it would be good to know that if that's going to be going forward, so we can help address some of those comments, or they may be perfectly legitimate comments that we need to step back and look at things on. So I know specifically the issue of decoupling, huge amount of misunderstanding on different pieces and parts of that. And once you sit down and tell people kind of what's happening, more of them go, oh, okay, we get it. But I just don't want somebody to show up in April up there where they're trying to vote, and we've spent all this time for working on this, and they start trying to wordsmith what we've done or quibble with everything, and all of a sudden it turns into a ball of yarn. So anyway,
is there a reason we can't communicate that to the interesting parties like now?
I think we have, but I don't know if it's going to be in the governor's packet or if it's something those parties are going to have to carry.
So,
see what I'm saying? So we don't know who's doing what, I don't think.
So I have recently spoken with Casey Anderson, and I know that she is having meetings regarding this. For those of you who weren't there, we, several members of this committee, were at the Tennessee Engineers Conference a couple months ago. I guess that was summertime, was it? I can't remember, but
October.
in September. Okay, well, it's still hot in September. So there was an opportunity to discuss some of this there at that conference. Casey and I have been in touch. Unfortunately, she's not here today. She's out of the state on business. But she has a couple of meetings set up in regards to this. As of now, I don't have any official word on whether or not this is going to be included in a packet. It's still, all of that is still being formulated by the governor's ledge staff. Once we know and have something definitive, we'll let you know. However, I can say that Casey has indicated on a number of occasions that if this portion is left out of the governor's legislation packet, that she'd be happy to run this herself and carry, that that society would then carry this bill because the society's in favor of it. So, I know there's a lot up in the air. I know it's December and the session's going to start soon, but until we get the word from the governor's ledge staff, I don't have much else for you at the moment.
I'm sorry, Ricky.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to go back to what Robert said, though, that While, yes, we have presented the information at the Tennessee Engineers Conference, and I don't know if Casey did a newsletter to broadcast it among either ACEC or TSPE, but there are a number of other professional organizations that are probably maybe equally as large and active in some of the legislative affairs, and that, like ASCE would be a big one, I know, and there are other ones too. I wonder if maybe, I mean, Casey has knowledge of all of those other organizations and has relationships with them, and I wonder if she could share that information and ask them to either one provide the information that we're proposing to those other organizations, professional organizations, or I think any of us would probably be available to speak to those organizations and help explain, and as best we could, how the proposal is rolled out and what it includes and what its intentions are.
Certainly, if you're invited to speak to a group, I'd encourage the outreach at any given point in time. I would just caution you on speaking in terms, in definitive terms.
You've coached us. We get it.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say if you get the opportunity to speak about this to any of those groups, take the opportunity to let them know that this has been proposed. I don't think that, acknowledging the fact that there was a proposal doesn't cause a problem. We just want to maintain that it is still very much a proposal until we hear otherwise.
Yeah, I think Robert's issue was that there hasn't been a lot of information provided to the engineering community about the specifics of what we're proposing, and it could result in maybe some level of misunderstanding. And if we've got the opportunity to get out ahead of it and get information to those other professional societies who could get it to their members, it might head that off. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, and if go ahead, Ricky, and he was going to, but yeah.
No, go ahead and answer him.
Well, yes, we've all worked pretty hard on trying to do that because we wanted to be as proactive as possible, because the worst thing to do is have, and no offense to our legislature, but having people that don't understand what we do try to write legislation and sort of try to do that on the fly. That's kind of we've all seen that happen. And I just kind of want to know where we were on that process. And you said, here's where it is. But it would be nice to know, do we need to get this group ready or that group ready to be able to carry that ball forward and give them as much information as possible, so that we're not, there's always an opportunity for things to be rewritten, but we would prefer that it be as close to what we've come up with as we can. And so that's the reason I asked the question. I understand that the governors have maybe not have made a decision, but it's nice to know who's going to lead the charge so that we can help carry the word out there, I think, and kind of when that's going to happen. That was the reason for asking the question, because everybody in this room has worked their tail off in trying to come up with something that protects the health, safety, and welfare and meets some of the desires of that the legislature has expressed over the years, and we're trying to clean all this stuff up, and I just don't want to see it get unclean, when we go through it. That was my reason for asking.
Oh, I do understand that, and I'll check. Casey and I have traded a couple messages this morning. I wanted to see if she was going to be here or not, and when she informed me she was out of state on business, that she and I are going to try and have a conversation later today. Mr. Barrick, you look like you wanted to.
Yeah, Robert, that's a really good point, and excuse my ignorance, but we have the language for this, right? We have spoken for the Tennessee Engineering. So is there any reason that we could not have the staff here or Casey send this out, the language out in an email to their membership, and with an email address or a phone number? I'll volunteer you. If you got any questions, call, and it's communicated.
She may have already done some of that, Rob. I don't know, and that's
Is
just.
that, I mean, is all that acceptable? I mean, is that legal for us to do that?
I just want to know who's on first, right? I mean,
Well, it's a great question.
I mean, that's the thing. So whoever's going to kind of take the point.
If it's everybody's responsibility to communicate it, then it's nobody's.
That's right. That's right.
Well, gentlemen, part of the process is, yes, there was a proposal. It was submitted. However, that language is subject to change. So until we have...
You can put that in an email. This is what we submitted.
Well, in this case, I'll defer to Maria.
Can't do that.
I just don't think the administration would be in favor of it, honestly. I mean, at that point, it's up to the governor's office if they're going. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Never mind.
in a way.
I thought there was a reason that wouldn't work. That's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, you all have to understand, like, Michael and I are, I mean, we worked really, really hard on it as well. So there's nothing it's not like an adversarial thing. Yeah. So we're all on the same team as far as that goes. But I just know that on the back end of things, it's not going to work that way. And certainly if we don't have any information on it, I don't think we'd be soliciting. Right? We don't have any information on it because we don't know if it's going to go forward for sure. And that's the thing. The proposal is just that, a proposal. And so soliciting comment, I think, from the public is kind of like, I'm trying to think of the word, like too soon, probably.
What is the date that the governor's package comes out where we will know definitively is it in or out?
All I know is that we had a deadline for the administration to submit to the governor's office. I'm not sure when the governor's office finalizes their legislative proposals and what is going to go forward. I can definitely ask.
We'll find out.
As soon as that happens,
yeah.
If it's in, then it sounds like we could communicate at that point. If it's not in, then Casey probably picks up the ball and we can communicate at that point. But that sounds like the time when it'll be go time at that point.
That's what it sounds like.
And I was going to...
We submitted everything in good faith.
Well, under the serenity prayer, being outside of our control, I say we let it go. When we're allowed to communicate, we will.
For what it's worth, I think when we presented it at the engineers conference, I didn't get the feeling anybody was surprised. The feeling I got was
there were a couple of questions and they were answered and they were head nodding. So it's.
I got the feeling people had heard all this before. I mean, I know that's a tight group. Maybe that's
those are the participants.
The ACEC TSPE group, and maybe it's not all the ASCE group. It's not ASHRAE. It's not IES, IEEE, whatever. But it's a pretty good core group of who would be probably involved with their legislators. So I got the feeling that we've done a little better job promoting it. Maybe this has a huge viewership. These meetings do. The ratings might be through the roof, and we don't know it.
We've gone from 4 to 6, so we've had whatever
50% increase.
That's right.
If I may, real quick, you mentioned other professional societies. Could you clarify which ones outside of the engineer? I assume these are outside of the engineering community.
No,
but tied to.
they'd be inside the engineering.
Just engineering societies is what I was thinking.
Yes.
Like
the ones that Ricky just mentioned.
ASHRAE is the biggest heating, ventilation, air conditioning, mechanical engineers, and it usually doesn't have an extremely strong activity in ACEC. So that's a organization, and neither does probably IES, which is illuminating engineers, electrical.
They're mostly technically focused, where NSPE and ACEC have
more politically, yeah.
More of
I agree.
Okay, thank you for that.
You mentioned ASCE.
The one specifically I was thinking about, because I do know that they are engaged in legislative activities, was ASCE.
There's probably some decent crossover
There
from
should be.
ASCE to ACEC, and
I have a comment on the definition, if we're finished with. I don't know if maybe I just didn't notice this before, but I think in number 10 on the back page, we should have mentioned incidental practice, not just with architecture, landscape architecture.
So would you put after architecture and landscape?
That'd be my suggestion, because there is overlap between particularly civil engineering and landscape architecture. And we don't want to try to legislate either group out of their current practice activities.
Version 7.A.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that, but I don't know.
That's good.
Well, we might have.
Well, I like the format much better, so if you're responsible for that, Maria, you did a good job.
Hey, thanks.
Okay, is there any further discussion on these items?
Probably ought on that definition, if that's going to be inserted, to get that email to all of us, so we all have the latest same version. It's confusing, and we've been looking at this for a while.
I can make the edit to number 10, and then I'll send this out to all of you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think
Maria, we'll be submitting the new amended version for the definitions committee meeting later? Okay.
we're good with that. You can press on.
It's got a date to it for right now, just to make sure that because we do have a lot of different versions, and sometimes we may have some more coming up. It helps to track where we are.
Okay, well, I believe we've moved it. We moved into old business here, with that discussion that we just had. But I would like to ask Maria if there's anything other legal review wise that I think there was one other item that we had discussed last meeting, which was in Mr. Bursai's meeting notes about comedy applications.
So Ricky, as of last meeting, I just wanted to double check in our rule and statute that we would be that you all would have the discretion to allow that. And that is permissible under the rule and law to allow comedy applications, even if their experience and exam were in different orders. It kind of goes back to what you all were saying earlier too, that, they're already practicing in another state. And so that's certainly within your purview to grant those applications.
Thank you. That helped.
Sir.
One other legal thing I think we talked about was the NCEES resolution of cooperation that, we're being asked to sign. If you're going to the NBA meeting in February, I bet we'll be asked again to sign. Tennessee's going to sign it. And what I remember is that the legal review of that came back that said that does not appear to be legally binding, which was one of our concerns, was that if we signed the resolution of cooperation, and that, just to refresh everybody on that was this resolution that kind of promoted license mobility between states, saying, hey, we're going to try to make it easier to practice, in multiple states and have comedy. And I think it means kind of basically try to get our laws more closely together, rules of the way we look at things to allow mobility. But we were worried that was some kind of legal document where we'd be held responsible if our laws and rules didn't match up exactly with everybody else's, which is impossible. So I think our legal review showed it was not binding. But I don't have much of a memory of us having a discussion after that point about whether we felt like we wanted to sign that or not.
But Ricky, my recollection of the discussion was we elected just to not sign it and ignored it. Not that we would either support it or not support it, just not reply.
We're asked, is there a reason? Because I guess I'm going to be in this meeting in February. Is there a reason we're not signing it?
I may interject quickly. In seeing some of the responses from other MBAs throughout the country, responses have been as simple as the state of insert name won't sign with its language in its current form. And it's been as simple as that. People haven't offered much of an explanation or specifics, just said under its current language, we're good to go. We're not. Meaning we don't have to
Give a reason.
We don't have to give them a reason. All we have to do is say current language, no thank you. Something a little bit more eloquent than that, but
Or that based on counsel from our attorney, we don't think it's binding anyway, and we don't want this to be construed as becoming law or perceived as law.
If it's not binding, then why not sign it? I mean, I'm not necessarily. I just think that it does open a door that maybe we're not ready to go through, but that's just me. And I don't know why we have to sign it. I think that's why we are a member of NCAAS, is we are striving to cooperate and work together. It's the reason we're here, to promote licensure. So I don't know what signing it, how much more, why that gives anything any more authority or power. I mean, I think the authority and power, us doing what we do all the time, should be enough evidence of that. And this seems to me to be kind of something that somebody at some point in time, which why it may not be legally binding, is used to whipsaw you a little. That word, bully pulpit you a little bit, where they say, well, look, you signed this, you must be, or you not. And that's Robert's view. It's sometimes not orthodox, but why we would or wouldn't sign it, just because it's just something else you're putting on a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
And,
I like that, because what you said about the fact that we're members of NCEES, that's the whole point, is to to kind of coordinate as you feel like you can with the other states, but we still have to look out for what we're doing. And why sign something that has a bunch of language in it that can be quibbled over when we're already doing kind of the spirit of the resolution? We've already taken care of that with our that I like that. I mean, I think that's reasonable approach to not signing it.
Michael, do we need to respond to them in any way, or are we free just to?
you don't. I'll just let them know that the state of Tennessee will not be signing.
So far, we're not alone. We're not alone.
You
on
won't.
That.
No.
Even though they made it sound like it.
And we're, at this point,
I'm sure there's a backstory as to why they felt like writing a one-page document that basically outlines their mission to begin with, and whether it's binding or not binding, if there's language in it that's troublesome and people are not signing it, I'd say we just let it go.
Yeah. There's definitely been a fair number. I'd say, based on what I can remember, I think there's well into the double digits of number of states that did not sign.
I guess the other possibility is, even though we've made a legal review of it and think it's not binding, I guess somebody could disagree with that, and I mean, then it would be decided somewhere else. So it's kind of safer not to sign it.
Okay.
So the committee is directing you to tell them that we're not going to sign it in its current form.
That is all I will say then.
That's all.
Which is
that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Well, that's basically, I mean, verbatim what those are. Those who aren't signing are saying is in its current form, we've elected to not sign it, and it does not. From what I can tell, I don't think there's a whole lot of. There's no kickback, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I saw somewhere that they really were pushing for 100% participation, that kind of thing. But I like answering if we're pushed. Our membership in NCES says all this without having to sign a resolution.
Okay.
Having just listened to a couple of days of meetings and votes and conversations with that organization, likely they are frustrated with the differences of opinions that come from each state, so that may be the motivation behind this.
You're exactly right, and I understand that our oath was taken to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tennessee, right? And while NCWS has got some really good things, and we're glad to be a member of the organization, our oath is not to NCWS, and so we need to understand there are going to be things in Tennessee as if there are in California and other places that will be different because of who we need to serve. And it's always strange to me when somebody wants you to sign a document that says what you're doing anyway. I mean, it just there's something, again, the backstory is, as Rob said, there's something there that just makes me a little, kind of makes you raise your eyebrow a little bit, but that's me.
Michael, is there any other business that needs to come before this august body?
I believe we've covered everything that I had on the agenda for you all. It was in the absence of multiple application reviews. Yes, sir.
The only thing is, I don't know if the committee knows that. I know I'm on the MBA committee for NCES, and apparently going to a February meeting where most of it is the board administrators like Michael who are members, but they have a couple of board members, and I'm one of those. So
thank you for doing it.
I'll make sure they know I'm speaking for myself, but anyway, I'll in spirit be speaking for what we talk about.
I went to that meeting one year, and it was actually, they had one day that was the board chairman, and the next day was the board administrators. And I think Roxana was here, and she couldn't go, so I went to both days, I believe, because it's in Atlanta. Is it?
This is in Greenville, their headquarters.
But anyway, it was a really helpful meeting, and you got the chance to sit around with some of the board administrators and other people and just talk about more what's going on with the particular board stuff. It's where I found out about the Louisiana master's degree thing. So, I mean, you don't have all the motions and all the junk going on. You get to talk about what's really going on. So it was I thought it was a very helpful meeting to me.
Yeah. And this one, we had a meeting maybe a month ago, and the MBA committee's been charged with there were like a dozen charges for them to look at their present laws and rules, model law. So there's like 12 or 15 of those where the committee's kind of wordsmithing the proposal to change some things, and it's kind of interesting going through some of those topics. They're not all of them are interesting, but some of them are. Anyway, I got a feeling that's going to be covered too.
Well, I had that on the big board agenda for tomorrow, but yeah, I was going to bring that up under my executive director's report, had just mentioned that the NCEES is fully funding travel and attendance, but also to inform you all that I intend to attend, and I'll be driving as well, so they'll cover the mileage. I figure it'll take me just as long to fly as it will to drive, because there's not a direct flight from Nashville to Greenville. But anyway, I do intend to go to Greenville and take part in that process.
And since you are driving, and since you're going through sort of my neck of the woods, you need to take I-26 through Johnson City. Don't take I-40 over the mountain. I'm serious. There's some construction going on now that's causing some pretty big delays in the North Carolina-Tennessee border. So you go through Johnson City, and I-26 comes in on the backside of Asheville, and you avoid a lot. It's about probably it's about 45 minutes to your trip, but it'll probably save you 2 hours not having to sit through construction.
I like that route. I've done it before.
Yeah, it's pretty up through there.
Yeah.
So make sure you go that way, and then don't go all the way. When you're going to Greenville, get off at just past Asheville. You're going to take whatever goes to US 25. My daughter went to Furman. That's why that's how we used to go, and it's pretty going down the hill. Plus, it's a lot shorter than going down and cutting across, I thought. So
great.
Just to let you know.
What helps even more is this is on tape, so I can always just go back
Sir.
and hear your direction again.
Well, there's some nice restaurants in downtown Greenville. It's a neat place. Neat place.
Okay, I don't have any more business for this committee. Is there anything you all would like to start? I know that's really putting myself out there, but if not, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
You waited until someone left before you said that.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out.
That's good.
Well, he left while somebody else was talking.
Yeah.
I'll second if we.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second whatever that motion is.
That would be approved, and we're done. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you all. Let's see. I believe our next meeting is the Architect Committee meeting, which is scheduled to begin at 10:30 a.m. So you all have 33 minutes if you're on the Architect Committee to get prepared. Otherwise, thank you all, and I'll see you again. We go ahead and pause the recording, please.
Ricky, are you on everything?
Oh, not.
I'd like to bring this month's meeting of the Architect Committee to order. Michael, can we do a roll call?
Sure thing. Mr. Waxter.
Here.
Mr. Tibbs.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson is absent today. So we will continue with, sorry? Oh, no, this is just the architects. So we do have physical quorum, which means that everything here is good to go. And we'll get into the agenda. So we'd start with new business. We do have one application that was up for review. Mr. Edwards, what was in your meeting material packet? Should be able to locate that on the, if you hadn't printed it out, it's on the iPad. Yes. And gentlemen, I would like to point out that Mr. Edwards has joined us virtually. if there are any questions that you would like to direct towards him, he would be able to chime in.
Thank you. I'm just refamiliarizing myself. I don't guess there's no one else here that can bring up the summary of it. Oh, great.
Frank, is your iPad not working?
That is correct.
Okay. See if we can get you one that is.
I think this is at this.
Brian, sorry, Mr. Tibbs. I need you to face the microphone if you can.
Okay, sorry about that. Frank, I think this was one that the school was not an NAAB accredited school. I don't know if you remember reviewing that case or not.
I do remember.
Okay. So, Frank, this begins on page 5 of the meeting material. I would also like to point out that Kara Evans is on virtually with us as well. So if there are any questions about process, she's available to answer those questions.
Oh, great. I was wondering, but Kara, is there any way you could just give a quick summary of the process that we went through, just refamiliarizing? I'm trying to look for that, the original.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. So Mr. Edwards applied for a Comedy architecture license, and upon receiving each file for the applicants, I do go in and review the NCARB file to ensure that everything is there and what is needed, and that the degree is an accredited degree or has been evaluated. What prompted this to be sent separately was that there is a letter from NAAB in his file stating a shortage on educational credits regarding that, and that his degree that he had from the community college that he attended was not considered comparable to an accredited program.
Okay, thanks, Kara. That I was trying to remember that. I thought that's what I remembered, something like that. Okay, so what he has sent us is his information to, I guess, to support his reasons why he does feel like he meets it.
Yes.
Does that sound correct, Kara?
Yes, sir, it does. He does have a large amount of experience, many years of experience. And he felt that in explaining it to me via email, his reasoning for the appeal is the amount of experience that he has in the other jurisdictions that he is licensed in. He feels that he should be able to obtain a license here in the state of Tennessee based on that.
Kara, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In his letter, he cites the TCA 622304 for comedy, and there's an A and B part. Is all of that in 622304?
I do not have that in front of me. I do apologize. I did not pull that information up.
That
One moment.
appears to give us the leeway to approve him, and not correct.
That was part of it in his explanation, yes.
Maria's, if you'd repeat that.
Yeah, can you all just, I don't have this application, but can you just kind of give me context for the question, and then I have the statute pulled up.
Yeah, and it doesn't, anyway, it says TCA 622304, there's an A and B part. And it says the board may, upon proper application of a certificate of registration, issue a certificate of registration as an architect, engineer, so and so and so and so, to any person who holds a like unexpired certificate of qualification or registration issued to the person by any state or territory or possession of the U.S. I won't read the whole thing, but this person is registered in other states. And so I guess my question is that giving us the leeway to approve him based on that?
Does he have an NCARB certificate as well?
Kara, do you know that?
Yes, he does.
He does. Okay.
He has a complete file.
I think the biggest, drawback that we saw in reviewing this was their EE, and let me get to it without misquoting it.
NAAB, I think.
The EESA NCARB credit summary, which indicates that from a education standpoint, he's 74 hours short of what it should be. And that's what threw a red flag at us.
Yes, sir, that was correct. From my review of the letter in the NCARB file.
Right. Frank talking, but I don't really see a problem in approving this as long as we're not doing something contrary to our state law.
So, I'm sorry, this is just my ignorance on this part, but I don't understand. What's the deficiencies? What is that related to? Is that just for our state specific?
Education.
For our state only?
In other words, this person has a 2-year degree from a community college.
Right.
But if, generally what I see in our laws is that it seems like there's 3 things you can do to get licensed, and they all include a 4-year degree. In other words, 4-year degree in a certain in an architecturally related program plus 5 years. And I'm saying this out of without looking at it, and then a 4-year degree from a non-architecturally related program with seems like 7 years. And again, I'm saying these kind of without having it in front of me. But
yeah.
So
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, under the statute, if he, even if there are deficiencies, if you would have, an application in our state, if he has another certificate in any other state, that's unexpired, it's active and in good standing, and then also the NCARB certificate, you all have the discretion to approve his application for comedy.
I remember struggling with this because of the same thing. That's like when when they have the NCARB certificate, generally I feel pretty good about going forward with it. But the education was so different. I wanted to make sure that we weren't just like I'm repeating what Frank said. I didn't want to go against our statute, which I thought was that we wouldn't. But if I'm with you, Frank, I normally feel like NCARB has gone through more of the rigors of validating their experience, and I could go along with it along those lines too. Do you still feel the same way?
Yeah. Given that, I would like to move that we approve this application for registration.
I second that. And I guess all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a successful approval.
And just to reassure you on that part that you're not going against any of our statutes. The statute states that it's within your sole discretion, so that's definitely within your purview to grant.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so I guess on to the old business, which is good old business, is the definitions. Did you want us to just review this and?
I'll just kind of give you a brief overview before you review, but basically, I did meet with Tony on this. We discussed the definition you submitted looked really great. The main thing that I did was just change the formatting so that it matches what the Secretary of State requires for formatting. And then also would like to note that I sent this to Ashley Cates with AIA for her review, and she's indicated that the leadership would like to comment and give their feedback on this, but just by the time I gave it to her, it was right before Thanksgiving, and she said that they didn't have adequate time, but she would like to get that to us, before the February meeting. So just know that that is coming. And then other than that, like I said, there weren't any substantive changes where I needed to take out. Once I had discussed with Tony, we just felt like this is, the things that you included were probably pertinent, and we didn't want to go, and you're the experts in your field, so we didn't want to take out words that might drastically affect the reading of the definition.
Okay, and I assume, the process of this, and I think we'll wait until we get the AIA's feedback, hopefully by the next meeting in January, whatever it is, February.
Yes.
And then once we agree to it, when it comes to the rulemaking hearings, then everybody in the world gets to say their piece.
Certainly.
Process.
Yeah, that's correct. There'll be a period of public comment.
I don't think we need to take any action on this. Just it seems like we've kind of been through this one a lot, so we can review whatever, make sure it continues to align with what we said. But it seems to be,
and I will.
It seems to be even more, but I think it's just the formatting, right?
Yep. And I will present this to the definitions committee this afternoon, just for their review, and they're kind of collecting everyone's at this time.
Okay.
All right. I think that does it. Any other new business?
Now that's all I had for you. If there's anything you all would like to bring up, now would be the time.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
We are now adjourned.
All right. Please pause the recording. For those who were online, we will return at 1 p.m. for the Interior Design Committee meeting. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your break.
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. It's 1 o'clock, and this is the Interior Design Committee meeting. We'll begin with a call to order.
Michael, I would like to call the Interior Design Committee meeting to order.
Okay, we'll take a quick roll. Ms. Doss?
Here.
Mr. Wagster?
Here.
Mr. Heathcote? Don't forget to push the button out.
Well, that's what I was waiting for. I am here.
All right, all committee members present accounted for. We only really had one order of business to follow up on this meeting, and that was the definition. All of you have received a copy of the proposed definition. So, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to give a brief summary of the CIDQ meeting that Michael and I attended virtually. It was supposed to be in Minneapolis in November, but they decided because of COVID and the pandemic that they would continue to conduct their meetings virtually. And it was a very good meeting. It was my first opportunity to attend a conference, a CIDQ conference. And one of the big topics was the North Carolina bill for interior designers that was passed. It is a practice act, and it is a bill that they would CIDQ and other design professional organizations would like to use this bill as an example of definitions, how we can across the country begin to try to go forward in some way toward a practice act. But the point of the North Carolina bill is that in the definition that we are proposing for discussion today, some of the language that is in this definition is supported by CIDQ and the North Carolina bill. And even though we are registered interior designers and ours is a title act, I still incorporated some of that language from North Carolina, even though they are a practice act. So does Maria, you have looked through the definition. You haven't. I submitted it. I really thought I had one more week to go, but this meeting kind of snuck up on me just a little bit. But the definition of interior design, the first three paragraphs, that information comes from CIDQ, and that is a little, I guess, more casual type of a conversation on the definition of interior design. We then get into a definition of the practice of interior design, and then who a registered interior designer actually is. I guess, do we have Alton and Frank, do you all have comments or discussion?
I enjoyed the word, and I may get it wrong, but Anthropometrics. Is that correct?
It is. It is.
What exactly? Again, I went to public school. What is that?
It's the motion of the body. Yeah.
Like
and
anthropod.
And how we our body uses space. Yeah.
Thank you very much
Absolutely.
for that clarification and education.
Yes. Frank, do you have
I have three things. Yes, maybe this is a question that we're trying to answer is, what is the definition of the practice of whatever, interior design, engineering, architecture? Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, that'd be correct.
So what I'm seeing here, there's one paragraph that says that's what this is. Are we saying that we want to include all of this or only that part?
No, and I mentioned this to Melanie as well. Looking at this document, it seems like the first three paragraphs are more just explanatory, and they wouldn't be a legally binding type of thing. It just goes into detail about what an interior designer does. But looking at those two last paragraphs, that's what we would include in the rule. That would be my suggestion, unless, and like I said, I got this yesterday, so I can look at it further and see if there's anything maybe that I wanted to highlight and include from those first 3 paragraphs. But I think those are just more broad and informational rather than binding and giving grounds to kind of give legal definition.
Good.
Yeah, and since I was kind of thinking that was the case, I would think you would want to include somewhere in this verbiage health, education, and welfare. Health,
Safety.
and
Yeah. Yes.
which I don't think is in either one of the last 2 paragraphs. It is in the general definition in the first 3 paragraphs.
Okay, great. I'll make a note to include, take a excerpt from that and just make sure that we highlight the purpose of an interior designer is to protect and maintain the public's health, safety, and welfare.
Yeah.
One other question, just really quick, Melanie. In the upper part, I understand, Maria, what you said, but there are some really specific elements that are included. Well, in particular, maybe paragraph 3 about the types of services or components that an interior designer would be part of a normal practice. And I wondered if it were me to aid in the portion of the practice part of it, and this is completely up to you. I would bow to your opinion on this, but some of those things are meaningful, and I wondered if they should be included down in the practice part of it. Yes.
I think that we could probably include a number of those items.
I would probably expand the practice of interior design to include some of those things and maybe limit the upper part.
The challenge that we have with this definition in the Title Act, in the conditions that we have in the state of Tennessee, is that basically anyone can call themselves an interior designer. And
not everybody can call themselves a registered interior designer, correct?
And so I think it gets a little complicated in that I would like to be as specific as possible with the definition of, I guess, a registered interior designer. And so maybe something from these first 3 paragraphs ends up under the definition of a registered interior designer, because the practice of interior design can be claimed by anyone. And so what we're looking for and what
I think it'd be nice to be able to differentiate between what a registered interior designer can do and maybe what a non-registered interior designer probably shouldn't be doing. Is there such a thing?
Non-registered interior designer can simply not call themselves a registered interior designer. In the state of Tennessee, we have nothing that distinguishes the practice. Registered interior design is different.
There are probably things that are contained up in those upper 3 paragraphs that you would want a registered interior designer to be able to do and perform.
Very good.
Yeah.
Certainly. I was going to suggest we could do like A through A, B, C, kind of bullet those out that you're specifically referencing in paragraph 3.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my only concern, I haven't fully thought through this yet, so I'm thinking through it right now. But that would be, like you're saying, that somebody else could do those things. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more, just to make sure that we're not.
Don't mean for it to be exclusive.
Okay. But just to explanatory.
Yeah, and I mean for it to be more inclusive about what a registered interior designer would do.
Okay. I'll make a note and then try to.
Does that make sense?
I think that's wonderful because that's what I've been trying to come up with is how can we differentiate the registered interior designer or not necessarily differentiate but give purpose and interest for people to register. If we include more information from those 3 paragraphs in who a registered interior qualified to do this, I don't think including
non-registered.
Yes.
Yeah, and my only other thought on that is that I think maybe for some of the other disciplines we're defining so that if there's someone acting in that role, then we would discipline them, and we look back to the definition and say, well, you're doing X, so we have the grounds to discipline you because you're not whatever discipline that is. But my only thought for this one is that we wouldn't really have the grounds unless someone were holding themselves out. That would be the violation, is the holding out, not the performance of the work. Okay. Sorry, I'm just kind of thinking through that. I just wanted to put it out there for you guys to consider as well.
No, I think this is. Thank you. I think that accomplishes the goal that I have been struggling with is to, how to get CIDQ information in there, and so I think it goes best in the registered interior design definition rather than in the practice. So that will encourage more people, I think, like we were talking, who have the education, the experience, and examination, regardless of how they, what work they perform, it will encourage them to register.
Yes.
Perfect.
They create some differentiation for people that hold registrations, and instead of just going to a furniture store and finding somebody that can pick out pretty colors,
Good with that, Frank?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to say that.
Yeah. Maybe we just let Maria figure that out.
Yeah, Maria. No, I think
I think it's we give her the words, and it is we do want to include, I think, that opening sentence in the first paragraph, a distinct profession, and that helps to qualify the definition with specialized knowledge. So that first paragraph or first sentence, I think, would be important to include.
That has the health, safety, and welfare reference in it.
It looks like to me the first sentence under registered interior designer is what sets a registered interior designer above somebody that just calls themselves an. They've actually taken that qualification.
Frank, your microphone is cutting out. You need to speak up a little bit.
I can't believe it would do that.
Turn your dial up to 7.
Where is it?
I just hit the internal dial.
Oh,
yeah.
I hear you. I have a problem. Start talking and then forget that I need to speak louder. So excuse me for that. But anyway, and I think I got through maybe what I was saying, but you know, the fact that the person is registered, they passed the exam, they have the experience, they have the education, that's a registered interior designer as opposed to somebody that's calling themselves one and, you know, selling furniture. You know, I'm being facetious there, but still, that's what sets the registered person apart from the non-registered, even as a title act. And like adding verbiage in there that the reason for that is to protect health, safety, and welfare. I mean, you know, bottom line, I guess.
You're advocating letting our professional wordsmith have at this a little bit.
Yes.
That's you, by the way. Okay.
Very good. And then also, is there, I would say there would need to be language in there that it does not include services that constitute the practice of architecture, engineering, since we are a joint board. Or is it already clear that those things are not performed?
That's what I was going to say.
Those are practice act professions, I guess, and they have their own, I guess, definition and limitations on what can and can't be done. I'm not sure you need to differentiate that here.
Yeah, because like for example, like in the other definitions, we're not saying, you know what I mean? We're not referencing the other ones. Like each discipline's definition will speak for itself, I think, and and it's just not assumed, but it's clear that this is what the language will say what each discipline and the practice of such constitutes.
An architect can sit for the NCIDQ. Engineers cannot by their education. The landscape architects cannot by their education. So the exam qualifies.
Should we add something somewhere that says education as defined by NCIDQ?
Well, I was actually so that last paragraph under registered interior designer references the education examination as authorized by the board. So my consideration would be to either, I'm hesitant to reference the statute because say something changes, but I'll have to look and see if the statute is broad enough to where we could reference the rule, because that would be the preference, right? Because the rule we can change. The statute is set in stone, and we know how that goes.
Yes, we do.
So I'll check into that, but I can reference authorized by the board as a broad term. So we should reference there whatever, either the rule or the statute that sets forth the specifics, and that'll cover the education exam. And I'm sure the exam portion of the rule or statute references back to CIDQ.
Good.
So once this definition is crafted, does it go to the professional organizations for their comment?
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm not asking if
no, it's good for feedback.
I don't know the path of this, and if it needs to go, does it go to CIDQ? Does it go, because the architecture definition is reviewed by AIA. Is that a courtesy or is that a requirement?
It's not a requirement, the requirement would be later on in the process where we open it up for like the rulemaking here, the official process, and that's where we solicit public comment. And at that time, anyone can submit their comments. But we just like to be on the same page as the national associations for each discipline, and just make sure that we're not way off track. They might have positive feedback or negative feedback, but either way, they could let us know if maybe there's glaring errors, or we might, they might have perspective, that we don't. So we just kind of try to work in conjunction with them in that. Do you have, I know we've had this conversation before, but do you have contacts there? Or Michael, does somebody have a contact at?
Well, I was going to say, in the past, we have consulted in this process with other professions. We've consulted with the state chapters, not so much the national office, but the state chapter, whoever is the president of the state chapter, has generally been brought into the conversation in some fashion. So that's where we would start.
Don Baltimore.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We use Casey and Ashley, so Don would be very appropriate.
Yeah. So I can work on this post meeting and then kind of send it out to you all, just to put your eyes on it, and then we can connect with the association to see if they have any feedback.
Wonderful. Very good. Awesome.
Good meeting.
Excited? I'm so excited. That's good, because that does accomplish and solves the challenge and brings it to a much more specific understanding of. So very, very good. Thank you.
Well, I don't have anything else on the agenda here for you all to take up. Is there anything new that anyone wanted to bring up? I mean, start a process, but obviously there would be no voting or anything on this because it's not on the agenda. So it'd be discussion only. So.
Not from me.
Either.
Other than, hey, one quick thing. I know that generally there are conferences that you go to. We've already resolved that though, but when the conferences are and that you're going and I don't know whether you'll go or somebody else will go from the state. That's already been resolved. Do we know that?
In terms of?
You go to the NCIDQ conference?
That was the conference that was in November. It was held virtually. We will go next November to Los Angeles.
That's better than Minneapolis in November.
It sure is. Do we go to CETA? Do we go to the Council of Interior Design Accreditation?
Not that I'm aware of. It's not come up. Well, it's not come up in my tenure here.
And we're in the same boat, so I'm not sure myself either. But I would like to mention that I don't know if you heard the discussion on the use of interior architecture. I can't remember if that was the first day or the second day. But at the CIDQ conference, there are representatives from boards across the country, as well as CETA and other professional organizations. And so I brought up the use of the term interior architecture and indicated that we were having some concerns in the state of Tennessee because the majority of our higher education programs have decided to change their major to interior architecture, and it's causing a conflict with an understanding of who they are and what they're able to practice. And I asked if other states were having the same issue, and it is an issue across the country. And so the CETA representative said that they were in full support of using the term interior architecture. It met the criteria, and they were going to continue to accredit programs if they wanted to change the major to interior architecture. And a lady from Arizona I spoke out, and she said, well, I wish you would stop. And she said it's really causing some issues, and until we can get a clear understanding and a unified understanding as to what interior design is across each state, please stop using the term interior architecture. And then it was crickets after that, and the topic changed over to something else rather quickly. But it is a concern.
We did have that conversation. I want to say that came up in October when there was a conversation between some of the attending educators who received money in our grant process. For some reason that conversation is ringing a bell.
UT. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's so on a national level, it's a concern. CETA is going to start getting some pushback from that title, from allowing schools to change their major to interior architecture. So we'll see what happens. We're hoping that it will settle down. A lot of the interior design, interior architecture programs are reverting back, or we hope that there is some type of general conclusion that CETA will just, say they are interior design programs. So, but
it's not fair, and I understand it from the university's perspective. They want to try to attract more people into the program, but it's not fair to the people that they're attracting, because the reference is, hey, well, if I graduate from here, I'll get to be a registered interior architect or quote architect, and that's really just not the case.
It is not. It is not. It doesn't even qualify them to. It only qualifies them to sit for the NCIDQ, and so it's really unfortunate.
That's misleading.
Yeah.
Misrepresenting too.
Well, that's all I have for discussion today. Would we like to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, that was
Okay, we
good.
can pause the recording, and for those who are virtually joining us, we will reconvene at 2 o'clock with the Definitions Committee.
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
All right, it is 2 p.m., and this is the scheduled meeting of the Definitions Committee. Mr. Chairman, you give us a call to order, and I'll take a quick roll.
Thank you. Yes, let's call this meeting to order.
Okay, Mr. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Doss. Mr. Barrick.
Here.
Mr. Barrick has just arrived. We'll call his name again in a second. Mr. Wagster.
Here.
All right, and we'll just say Mr. Barrick is here. Okay, you all have received some information from Maria, and I believe those definitions are what we are here to discuss. Maria, I would, is there anywhere you'd like to start?
Well, I'll just give a brief overview. Blair, the people on the other committees have heard all of this, but I'll say it again for the Definitions Committee because it's important. So I did take architect, engineer, and landscape architect, and I reviewed with Tony. We went over those, and we just kind of just like looked at what language we had been given, and I mean honestly, it didn't need editing. And we said, that you all are the experts in the practice of what you do, so we didn't want to change words that might affect how the definition reads. But So that's why you don't have a red line, because there's not like major subtractions. The only thing there's like formatting I did that's in accordance with the Secretary of State's office. So when we file the rule, it will have to be, like that. And then the other thing was, like, in landscape architect, there was a reference to a statute that I included, just to make sure that was up to date. And so let's see, I'll stop there and see if you all have any questions or want to go anywhere, but then we can go by each one if that's, or however you would like to do it.
I do think it would be helpful to go through each one.
Okay.
Because I have no idea. Of course, I know what the LA landscape architecture definition looks like, but I don't know about the others. So,
Marie, if I may interject real quick, just out of courtesy, Mr. Baltimore, the interior, who is the interior design liaison, he is on with us virtually, so I would suggest that maybe we go to the interior design definition first. I know we just had that meeting, but for the sake of Mr. Baltimore and his presence, we extend that courtesy.
Thank you.
Great. And then just one more thing before we start on the interior design. I did want to mention that this was sent to, the three that we had. So we had landscape architect, and engineer. We had all those. So those were sent to Ashley Cates with AIA, and then also Casey with the engineers. But Ashley got back to me and stated that I sent it to her right before Thanksgiving, so honestly it wasn't enough time for her to get with leadership and then get back to us. But she said they will have comments, so they're going to let us know, and I'll keep you all posted on that. But yeah, if we want to go to the interior design.
Maria, let me ask, did you also send the landscape architecture definition to Nathan?
I did not, and I need to get his contact information. Thank you for that. Because I initially started with the architects and the engineer ones, and then, so I will make a note. Thank you for saying that.
We just completed, the Tennessee ASLA just completed the national conference here in Nashville, so they've been busy anyway, so right. I doubt that they would have spent much time looking at our definition because everybody's been so busy. So,
thank you, Blair. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Only?
Hey, so how Dawn
I think you're setting the format.
Okay. Don Baltimore does not have this before him, correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Don, what I put together was for discussion by the ID committee, as well as discussion within the definitions committee. I have 3 paragraphs that are basically CIDQ information taken from their definition, their short definition, and I believe a couple of paragraphs from their their longer definition. And then I prepared a practice of interior design statement and a statement for registered interior designer. And I will simply read to you what we have as far as the practice of interior design, and I think we agreed as a committee, as an interior design committee, that this definition for the practice of interior design is acceptable. And it states that performing or offering to perform or holding oneself qualified to perform professional interior design services, including but not limited to management of interior non-structural, non-seismic construction and alteration projects, preparing of working drawings and documents relative to interior construction, including space planning, reflected ceiling plans, paths of egress, occupancy calculations, fabrication of non-structural elements, casework, millwork design, specification and documentation of materials, finishes, furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. And we will, someone can send this to you, and I think Maria is going to follow up with you during our ID committee meeting. We wanted to make sure that you were included in this definition process as you were in prior positions regarding this definition. So that's the practice of interior design.
Melanie, Mr. Baltimore, I just emailed you the draft that Ms. Doss had submitted earlier, so you should see that in your inbox.
Very good.
Yes, I have it. I see it on my phone now.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you.
So what we just thought might be best is we have the definition of the practice of interior design. The registered interior designer, we incorporate some of the language that is in the first paragraph. The interior design is a distinct profession, and so forth. We include that first sentence to make sure that we include promote health, safety, and welfare of the public. So that first sentence in the first paragraph will go into the registered interior designer definition. And then in the third paragraph, Maria is going to do some of her fancy work and extrapolate information out of that third paragraph as far as a listing of what a registered interior designer can perform. And so what that does, our goal was to better identify who a registered interior designer is and what they can do, and the importance of being a registered interior designer, simply because we are a Title Act. In the state of Tennessee, we are not a practice act, and anyone, in essence, can refer to themselves as an interior designer. So we wanted to enhance the definition of a registered interior designer with greater purpose. That sound good, Don?
Yes, me too, but I haven't had a whole lot of time to go to it. I recognize some of it from what was developed at CDIQ, because I was at one meeting, I guess by now it's at least 3 years ago, and the definition was way too long. We used this, cut it down to this 3-paragraph and recommended it. And then this other sounds pretty good too, the practice of interior design and registered interior designer.
Okay. Maria, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I was just going to say, Don, I'm going to work on the edits that we discussed today at the committee meeting, and then I'll send that to you. Michael gave me your email, if that's okay, and then we can kind of get some feedback and go from there.
Okay, thank you, yes. And you have my email, I assume.
Yes, thank you. Michael sent it to me.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So as I understand it, this will be assembled, sent out to Dawn and others possibly to review, and then we'll come back. It'll come back here to the committee, because I think that this is a question we need to ask for each of us, each of our professions. You know, how are we going to handle this? But that's the approach at this moment. Okay. All right. Good. Frank? Like to talk about the definition of architecture?
Change glasses there. Yeah, the practice of architecture definition, I think everybody has, and this was given to Maria for review at the last meeting. And what you see in front of them is no different from what was handed out then, but she is going to then take it, and we have, this will go to the AI Tennessee group, Ashley Cates. And like Maria was saying, Ashley got this about, 2 weeks ago at the most. And so AA Tennessee plans to give feedback on this, but really didn't have time to have that done by this meeting. And so it's an ongoing process, and I believe, by the February meeting, I think we're looking at trying to get this nailed down a little better. Anyway, what you have is what we've proposed at this time.
And Frank, the only thing I will say is I just format. So the only thing that's different about it is the content's the same, but it's formatted so that it's in compliance with how we're required to format our rules. So that's maybe the only difference that you'll see.
Right. And if you're reading this, if you look on the back, there is one letter on the back page. we don't want to lose that, because we don't want the contractors thinking we're responsible for site safety. But anyway, that's where we are.
Good, thank you. The engineering side of things. Who would like to speak to the engineering definition?
That would be me. I'd like to congratulate the architect.
Mr. Barrick.
I'd like, excuse me, a little formatting. You can get it on one page. We won't be able to do that. I am new to this committee. I had absolutely nothing to do with putting this definition together, but I am told we love it. And we are ready to take it to the next step if they're, and that is my report. Oh, I'm sorry. Maria has something else to say about it.
No, I just wanted to say I do have one edit on the document from the engineer committee meeting, but on the back on page 2, under 10. So it's going to be architecture and landscape architecture. So we wanted to make sure that we're not infringing on landscape architecture. So I've added that, and that will be included in the final. And then, yeah, I'll get with Casey and see if she has any feedback for us on it.
I do have one question, and it's on the second page, and it's item 3. And it's just trying to, in my head, it says the practice of explicitly designed to include the following. Then item 3 is being in responsible charge of the teaching of engineering. Does that mean anybody that teaches in engineering classes has to be a registered engineer?
I have no pride of authorship in this, and
I understand.
And there are a number of people that teach engineering that are not registered.
I know Stephen's here. I don't know if you've got any.
Well, I've got a little bit of insight on that, but the reason I'm here is because my name's on the list. On the one you emailed out. It's written in red, by the way, so I'm not sure what happened. But to respond to the question, some time ago, well, a long time ago, when I was president of TSPE, one of the things that I tried to tackle was academic exemptions and industrial exemptions. And my proposal to universities was that even though I knew we weren't going to get everybody registered, if someone is teaching a course in structural steel design, someone ought to be in responsible charge that it's being done properly. And it could be done by a graduate student. It could be done by a professor who's not licensed in Tennessee. So my idea was that someone, just like in a consulting firm, everybody that does design work's not licensed, but someone is supervising that work or in responsible charge. So that was I didn't know that was in there, but that's my thinking as far as why it would be there.
We'll call that a happy miscommunication, Mr. King. The committee assignments that are included in the meeting material won't go into effect until tomorrow when they've had a chance to be reviewed. But we're glad you're here, so you could help. You could help shed some light on that, so it worked out.
I mean, I'm really on this committee or not?
You are.
Okay.
We're ganging up on them, Rob.
Well, I'm glad you were here for that for that discussion because you have history.
Anything else on the engineering definition? I frankly have not had time to go through all of this, so no doubt when we come back in February, there may be a few questions here or there.
We will include all 4 of these definitions in the February meeting material with any amendments that are being discussed here today.
We will also have a definitions committee set for February as well.
May not need one. I mean, we may just be able to do this as a full board. But we can talk about that.
I'll be in favor of that if it's possible. I do believe the professional associations are going to be a part of that whole discussion. So, okay. All right, good. All right, anything else on the engineering side? No? We're good. With regard to landscape architecture, this is basically the same, I believe, definition that we presented before. And as we assembled this, the Tennessee ASLA chapter did assist with the language of this, but certainly it does need to go back to them for their review, and so now we have that opportunity. I think that the only concern that Tennessee ASLA would have and that I would have is just the overlap that happens between our professions, making sure that we're covered with areas, the overlap. So and it appears that we are. So I think that we're perfectly fine. Now, if we need to lengthen this definition to a page and a half or 2 pages, we can certainly do that if you'd prefer that we do that.
Well, I've got a question on item 2 of this.
Okay.
Why you felt the need to list exempt persons?
I think let me read through it. Let me just make sure my answer is correct.
Exempt, does that mean that somebody is allowed to practice as a registered or as a landscape architect? Like I said, like B, any person engaged in the practice of planning is customarily provided by community and regional planners.
We are oftentimes, there are many landscape architects that practice planning, and yet they're licensed as landscape architects. And some choose to get a degree in landscape architecture, but practice planning. And there's that confusion in between those areas. But how do you define planning? How do you separate those two? I think is the overall question. That's why that statement was in there. Does it successfully reach the goal? Maybe that's what I need to think through, and our committee needs to think through.
Well, and the next one is what you see a lot of is somebody owns a nursery and they do, their own designs for plantings and stuff like that. Does that mean they can be called a landscape architect? Is that what this is trying to tell me? Or?
No, it means they can continue to practice doing what they're doing. Planting designs, for example.
So you're saying that planting design is something the landscape architect does, but a nursery owner can do it also. I don't know. I may be just making a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm
No,
just
I'm-
trying
I'm-
to figure out what the reason for some of this is.
Well, that's why we need to go through it.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. But to answer the question about the nursery industry, is that they do planting design and they provide planting designs. They have forever. That's not really an absolute definition of landscape architecture per se. Landscape architects are taught planting design, but we're taught much more than just planting design. So I think we were just trying to be careful, making sure we're not stepping on the toes of others who we know are out there practicing and doing some of the things that we are. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Is there a better way to handle this?
When would planting design encroach upon landscape architecture and be something that you wouldn't want to see happen?
There are regulations that require a landscape architect to provide a planting plan for example, a stamp plan for a community. And then, as I recall, we have the 5,000 square foot rule with buildings, and that carries over to the landscape architectural side of things as well. So if Frank, for example, you're working on a 6,000 square foot building and a planting plan is required or needed, then you would hire a landscape architect because of that 5,000 square foot rule. Maria, does that sound accurate?
Yes, sorry. And
So
that statutory reference in 2C, that's where the 5,000 square foot requirement is referenced.
Yes. Okay. That help with that, Frank?
Yeah. I think.
Well, it sounds like I need to go through this in a little more detail, and if you'll express what other concerns you have, then by golly, we'll go through it.
Well, it says, and maybe this makes it more understandable to me, because a person's included a person who acts under the supervision of a license or any employee of a person lawfully engaged in the practice of landscape architecture. So are you saying the nursery guy has to be legitimate, work under a licensed landscape architect?
No. Exempt person in that case is under C, which references their profession, but also references back to the 5,000 square foot minimum requirement that would require a landscape architect.
Those three items are exempt from that requirement.
Yeah. And Frank, you just brought up a really good point, because I was kind of looking at this, and A through C, they are exempt, but we start too with saying, these persons are exempt. So maybe a better way to write that would be to the following persons are exempt, and then do an A through D. So then it's just a list, instead of starting out, these are exempt, and then also these are exempt. So then you've just got 4 clean.
That would be cleaner.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a need to even have a statement about who is exempt?
We chose to put it in there because we thought it would be helpful if someone's reviewing the regulations for them to be able to understand. But I don't know how it's being handled with regard to architecture and interior and engineering.
See, I can relate to this through the interior design definition, in that there are a lot of other categories of like kitchen planners, kitchen and bath planners will say, that could be sort of considered, I guess, in the same way that a nursery would be in relationship to landscape architecture. We have not chosen to use any of the to select anyone who would be exempt. And I guess I'm trying to, if you all put exempt categories, should we put exempt categories? And then if that happens, then we, as far as interior design profession, we would really muddy the waters.
So my understanding is that because the interior design is the Title Act, the exemption is, well, the thing is, if you're not calling yourself a registered interior designer, but so that's why I don't think they need exemptions on this one for ID. I think it is helpful with the landscape architects, and then architects do have as well exemptions. Engineering, I do not think has the exemptions.
Maria, let me ask, on our 2A, officers and employees of the United States government, is that statement within all of our definitions?
There's something in the statute, and I'll have to double check on that. So it would just be a reiteration.
It would seem a potential problem for calling out other professions that may be exempt. Would be, professions are always changing. You know, there'll be new professions that come around. So are we boxing ourselves in or setting ourselves up to have to change this more often than not? Really following Frank's lead, I believe. He's questioning why we're even doing this, I believe. Is it really necessary? I mean, it will seem to me that 2A was not necessary. You agree? Because that's the case for all of us, right? All of our professions. So we could take 2A, remove that from this definitions, this definition.
So then that poses the question, do we want to also remove from the architects their exemptions? Or do we want to?
Saying what's not the practice of architecture. Not sure that's saying is
a little different.
It's a specific saying.
A good example is being responsible for site safety, for example. That's a construction activity that's not the practice of architecture. The contractor is always responsible for his site safety. Otherwise, we'd be sued all the time for somebody cutting their finger. And it's the contractor's responsibility to see that the site is safe. You know, I don't see that as any of these being an exempt person. These are activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the landscape architecture definition 2, B, and C, then, is it necessary to even call those out? Planning is a profession that is oftentimes confused with landscape architecture, and let me give you a reason why. University of Tennessee master's degree in landscape architecture. Some argue that it's a planning degree as much as it is landscape architecture. So when they graduate, the vast majority of the graduates go into the world of planning. So they can choose to become licensed as a landscape architect, but because they're planners don't have a registration per se. They have AICP, but that's it. So that's how this gets muddy and how it gets confusing with regard to landscape architecture and planning. And then our 2C, which is just about nursery operations. In our firm, we don't compete with others that are doing, who are like gardeners and landscape contractors and those who do other type of planting design. We just choose not to go there. But I think that our 5,000 square foot rule, it really helps us define where we step in, where our knowledge steps in.
I mean, you could keep C and then also I think maybe expand a little bit on what planning is defined as and how it doesn't apply. I don't know, just a thought, but
It'll be like defining planning.
Trying to think of a way to word that where similar way to the architect, this activity is not considered the practice of landscape architecture, and that would be a nursery operation that meets the, doesn't exceed the provisions of, TCA 62, 5,000. Rather than say these planning design, planning, just like I have my house, the landscaping redone every few years, and I go to a landscape company and they draw up all kinds of pictures, and then I cut it in half. But that's kind of what you're talking about. Is what they do is they'll do a landscape. I'll call it a planning plan more than what I call landscape.
Yes,
not showing regrade.
Exactly.
Drainage or
right
roadways.
Exactly. So putting it in the same format of the practice of architecture definition, your number 2, construction activities that are not practice of architecture, what you're suggesting, Frank, is that we really sort of fit it in like that. I like that idea because that way it also makes us a little more consistent with each other as well.
Yeah, and I was also gonna say with that, so I'm following, to match the architects, but then would we still take out A, but then just leave B and C and write it so it's more of an activity rather than an individual?
My answer would be yes, because the officers and employees of the United States government is handled somewhere else. So that's not necessary. So we can just remove that. That makes sense. Everybody agree?
I think so.
I will say, just from a person who's not in the profession, the planning part, it might be helpful if we can find some language somewhere. Maybe another state has rules or something that
planning.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go out to AICP and see how they, the American Institute of Certified Planners.
Okay, that'd be great.
That is, as opposed, they have a test that they take for you to become AICP, but that's a national organization, as ASLA is for me, a landscape architect.
Great.
But it's their own in-house type certification. So I'll go look at that definition. How about that? Okay. Other comments on the LA definition?
I was just wondering in 1B, what is meant by alignment of roadways?
Alignment of roadways, doing a subdivision design, for example. Doing in my case, I will do a master plan for a development, and we'll do the road alignment, and at some point we hand it over to our engineering group, whoever we're working with.
I would say in your education, that is part of your education, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And in testing too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That terminology means a whole different thing to a civil engineer.
I think if they use location,
Well,
they're telling you where it is.
Barrick. Sorry, I need you to speak into your microphone.
Didn't mean to have a sidebar there. I was just saying, I think they're talking about the location of a roadway, and when you say alignment in engineering terms, it has something to do with the actual design of the roadway, which I don't think is what they're talking about.
There are landscape architects who will design the roadways. I mean, in our education, we are taught not only the alignment, but plan and profiles and stormwater, the capacity of curb and gutter and that type of thing. So I hate to exclude those who practice that. And most often they're working in engineering firms, working alongside engineers, but they do practice that.
That'll continue to be a conflict. That was one of the first arguments I got into with a landscape architect a long, long time ago. I think it was Trey Benefield. You know Trey?
I do know that. I was educated to, in my education, I was taught all of that.
So you're saying, so you're saying a landscape architect can design a roadway and submit it to whatever authority has jurisdiction, and they will approve it with your stamp.
I'm saying that if we are educated, if I'm educated to do that and I submit it to, let's say, the city or whomever, then yes, they should approve it.
That's all that matters. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's about the education, but if you don't have that education, that experience, you shouldn't be submitting the plans. But we are educated that way. It's like the manual traffic control devices. I'm trying to say, last year there were 7 questions on the LA exam that have to do with traffic control. And most people don't understand that we are taught that in school. But even on our exam, our licensing exam, there are questions regarding that. So we are a misunderstood profession in a lot of ways. But I think there are probably some cases where people are working outside of their area of knowledge and maybe their education, and that's why we need to be licensed.
I'm a mechanical engineer. I'll leave you in right there.
Well, like I said, this will continue to be a conflict, but my conversation years ago was, Trey came in my office and was telling me this, and I said, well, how do you do roadway design? He said, well, I use this landscape architecture handbook. And I said, that's not the appropriate national standard. So there's some, that's one of those incidental practice things that we all have to have that built in, because there is overlap. But in answer to Rob's question, since I work for a municipality, municipalities decide what professions they want to do some of these overlap things. And like in my area, that wouldn't be accepted. Maybe in some, but not in mine. And the same overlap happens about roadway design and drainage with land surveyors. So local governments make that decision too.
I agree. Local governments do make that decision, and the state government will make that decision as well when you're working on state and federal work for that matter. But I remember years ago in a tiff with the city of Memphis about me stamping a final plat. I didn't see him turn red over here.
A subdivision plat.
A subdivision plat. So
with
on that
property lines on it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So we're taught surveying. Landscape architects are taught surveying. They're taught road alignments. They're taught how to read regulations. We worked hand in hand with our engineering staff, and below our stamp, we put what we were in charge of. So in my case, on a final plat, mine was the alignment of the road and the lot layouts and the buffering that was required, okay? And the boundary survey was stamped by the surveyor and who was also an engineer, okay? But city of Memphis did not want to approve that. And I was at the time I was with a firm that was 60 or 70 people, and we went and said, if this individual is doing this and educated to do this, why shouldn't they stamp it? And so eventually we were allowed to stamp it. But I can assure you, there aren't many landscape architects that will do that same thing. But we are educated to do it. I mean, we are educated to do it. So in my case, I'll stand up against anyone with that. In grading and light drainage, I mean, grading. Most people don't understand that we take more coursework in grading design than any civil engineer does. Or I shouldn't say that. Most civil engineers do. And, besides the fact I've taught a bunch of civil engineers how to do grading, ours is just a softer type grading, and it works. But together, that's the whole idea of working in teams. But a landscape architect can do grading as well. And in our case, at our firm, last year we had 6 firms that brought grading to us because they like how we approach things. And sometimes we would take it to the end and stamp our grading work, and other times we would give them the preliminary and do the earthwork calculations, hand it over to them, and we would talk about it, and then they would take it from there. But the fact is, we are doing the grading. We are doing some grading design. In our firm, we do a lot of grading design. But it's one of those, it's these incidental areas where we do some of the same things that civil engineers do that may be problematic in some folks' mind. I don't know. But we are educated to do this. My formal education, and I know the staff, the people that work with me, they had similar type instruction in college. So how do we get through this?
Incidental practice.
Incidental practice. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything?
Let me kind of ask, this is kind of a general question here, but all of these definitions will be part of a rule should everything go through, which means if there is a dispute, then the board has the ability to make determinations as to whether that's incidental practice or not. And so that to me, if it was a law, I think it'd be a problem. But with it being a rule, I think it gives us the board, I won't say us, I might not be on it then, but it gives us the ability to look at the situation and see if there's a landscape guy doing something he shouldn't be, or if there's a civil guy doing something he shouldn't be. I mean, it's just, that's the reason we're here.
Well, I think it would function exactly the way it functions right now. uh,
Right.
you know, a complaint's filed and it's signed by someone in the office and it's investigated. And if more than likely, if there isn't a problem with the work that was done, found, nothing happens. It's closed.
And I can add language, like a clause, because this is, like you said, it's all going to be one package in the rule. So I can add a caveat and just that. So just say something like incidental practice, that determination shall be made, and the board has a full discretion to make the decision for violations.
I think that'd be
That's a good idea, because I think in the engineering definition, there was an attempt made to do that. It probably would be better if you do that. That applies to all.
Good idea. Okay. All right. Any other comments?
If I can address some of the comments in the practice of architecture definition in relationship to overlaps. Item 1B5, where it says interior space planning, and number 6, interior and exterior finished materials. Can we, in the listing of considerations for developing concepts for interior design, can we use the language interior space planning and interior finished materials, example, durability, so forth? Is that fair to say? And
Oh, sorry. You're saying for 5 and 6 to include those in
the interior
okay.
design definition, as far as number 6, it would be interior finished materials.
Okay.
Well, she's list, and I think it would be to use common language.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, in the practice of interior.
The barrier-free, yeah, right.
Frank?
The
Need you to speak into the microphone. Sorry to keep reminding you all, but it's as important because this is on the record.
yeah, and then
And I go back and listen to these when I'm trying to remember what we said. So if I can't hear it, then.
and something that I don't recall being in the interior design definition is the barrier-free and accessibility for interior requirements.
Okay, so barrier-free design and accessibility for interior. Okay.
Any other, excuse me, any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I'm a little delayed here. I was looking, the barrier-free comment is interesting to me because we also get involved in that, but the engineers do as well. And I was just looking in their definition to see if it's in there. Maybe it's not needed by the way that they've handled their language. I'm not sure. But okay, so we've gone through each of these, and we know we're going to make a few adjustments here and there and share them with our professional societies, and then come back in February and continue our conversation. That sound good to the committee? Okay. Any other business before the definitions committee? I will entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
This is to adjourn. Move to adjourn.
Okay, thank you all, and we will schedule a February meeting of this committee. We'll have a quick 7-minute break before we come back for the outreach committee. Good? Okay. All right, let's unpause the recording, or did you pause it at all? All right. Okay. Well, we are back. It is 3:02, and this is the Outreach Committee. Mr. King, if you'd give us a call to order.
I will call the Outreach Committee to order for our last meeting of the day.
All right, and I will give a quick roll call. Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Bursai?
Here.
Mr. Parker?
Here.
Mr. Tibbs? Thought Mr. Tibbs might be joining us online. Ms. Doss?
Here.
Okay. Mr. King, floor is yours.
We will continue our discussion of outreach activities, I think, which primarily consist of how we're going to approach a proposed newsletter that we talked about. I think last meeting we had a good bit of discussion about this and referred everyone to the website, which has several past newsletters, and we talked about certain items we thought were important to include in a newsletter, whatever frequency we decide upon. They were things like just in general what's going on with the board, new rules as they're promulgated, disciplinary action, pass-fail rates for exams, list of new licensees. Sometimes there's a listing of licensees who have died, just for general information. So I think that's the kind of thing we're looking for, and to supplement that, an article written by a board member. So that's where I think we are. And I think we discussed starting out trying to have one newsletter a year, and we talked about the timing may be coming after the session ended, so we could report whatever might have happened relating to engineering. How's that sound?
I like the idea. I think that's a good idea. I would love to have the newsletter out 3 times a year if we could. But I understand that it takes a while once we prepare information, it takes a while for it to be reviewed and go through the pipeline to make sure that all is good and up to the state of Tennessee standards.
This is totally not my thing, but I just had thought of something that might be helpful for everybody. It's a question. And I know this is different because this is a multidisciplinary board, but like with accountancy, they have just, one discipline, and then they have their national association. They actually just send them content, and then a part of their service is that they compose and format the letter and make it, like ready to send out. I didn't know.
Some of these newsletters have NCEES articles in them.
Gotcha.
Is that so?
I just didn't know if maybe that was a service, like even though there's different, disciplines, like I said, on that maybe NCARB or CWS or any of them might provide that service. I don't know. Just a thought, but because I know the formatting and stuff is the issue. It's kind of, the hard part. Can be.
As far as the format, I mean, this is the last one that we had in 2018. I mean, I don't know does that exist somewhere on the state system where it's just plug and play, pull out what was there, put in.
Couldn't tell you.
New content.
Does it say anywhere on there if it was designed and laid out by anyone in particular?
This is just straight off the website, and on the website, you get to a place where it says newsletters, and this is the last one. It's got, I don't know, 5 or 6 newsletters on the website, but this is the last one. It doesn't say where. I didn't see that it said where it came from. I mean, it came from the board. It came from the board staff. I can tell you nobody on the board put that together. We did. Robert and I wrote one article that was put in with a lot of other content that it was more content there than I remembered. It was 18 pages. And there was an article in there just lifted from the NCEES magazine that they put out that with permission. There was
listing of the grants too.
The listing of the grants was in there. There was a legislative update in there that I kind of agree with Michael, your comment last time that Casey does a good job of covering legislative updates for our industries, and maybe Ashley does too with AIA. We could put references in there to their newsletters and not repeat all that information if we wanted to. But I mean, that's a possibility.
But they have a much quicker timeline. The one thing I think that if you're going to put something out, I believe what needs to be avoided is A, redundancy, but B, it's got to be timely. And I again, my understanding about those past issues of newsletter is that one of my predecessors did all of that on his own. And he only had this one program that he was working on. I'm not sure if he farmed that out to somebody or not. I could give him a shout and see if there's a template for it somewhere. But my proposal would be for you all to submit the content, and then we can see if our comms team can put together a template.
I don't think we're thinking of the same way. And Roxana was the director when this was put out.
Okay.
So she'd be a source. But I don't think the content comes from us because it's a list of the new exam, the people who have passed the exam. It's a list of the registered people who are been deceased in the last year. We don't have. I think it's basically the only thing you're going to get from a board member is an article that we write. The rest of the content, I think, lies within the administrative staff. in your records.
Okay. I'm not aware of, Caleb, do you know, do we keep track of, like, actually a list of people who have deceased? Who are deceased?
That would have to be submitted to us, so it's not the best of ways to keep track of that information. That we have to get that. Usually that comes back with a renewal notice, and they'll say this person is deceased, or we'll send them documentation.
Yeah, I have no idea how that, other than what you just said.
So with the grant stuff, we've got a press release that's queued and ready to go. This conversation just reminded me that we were waiting for the special session to end before we put that press release out. But it's ready to go. We've got the grants notice going. We've got a great comms team, and I believe that there are ways that we can get these messages out in a case-by-case basis through that comms team, as long as we're not, overusing them, so to speak. I think Caleb says that we have some past issues of this newsletter on our shared drive. We could take a look at those, but again, content-wise, I'm not sure where they got the information from, especially those who have passed on. I mean, somebody would have to give us that information, because I don't think anybody really keeps that, do they? Wouldn't the NCSS be the one group that may keep that?
Now, this is architects and engineers and landscape architects. And I think that'd be a question for Roxana, maybe.
I agree.
Where did that come from, like on the last newsletter? I don't know. That's, unless it's what Caleb said. It's just whatever's in the file may not be complete, but it would be what the board has captured in terms of responses for renewal. I don't know how else that would work.
Okay. I mean, I'm curious. Is there somebody passes away and it's been months. I understand that there could potentially be a list somewhere, but I mean, if they're a friend of yours, wouldn't you know already? You know what I'm getting at? It's like, again, I want it to, if we're going to put something out, I feel like it needs to be timely and relevant. If it's news that people already know, I just don't know about the relevancy, but that's why I'm asking you all to help us by providing these source materials, because you all know what's relevant. We don't.
I think it's more, it was kind of an in memoriam thing. It was more of a kind of an honor thing. These people gave their lives to these professions, and to appear in our newsletter seemed appropriate. And then, throughout the state, I don't know, I may not keep up or have heard about somebody in Nashville or Knoxville that I knew, so I would say it was kind of a nice feature, but I don't want to get hung up on that, just that with the newsletter, if that's a problem. But it was
turn into an obituary.
Yeah. We don't have to become an obituary, but it was just a little kind of an ending thing.
List of,
it was just a nicety thing, at the end. But there was a lot of content in here, and I guess the message is, I know the article that we wrote was the only content that came from the board.
What if we tried to do a once or twice a year op-ed placement from a board member, as opposed to, say, a newsletter specific? We could have an op-ed that our comms team could try and get placement in the major newspapers across the state for maximum, not just industry, but for everyone. I know we keep spinning wheels on this, and I want to try and get to a resolution where everybody feels good about it. But, I feel like the staff, especially right now where we are, with a general lack of knowledge, because it's been so many years since a newsletter's been put out, there's nobody, aside from Roxana, There's nobody really on staff who was ever a part of that.
Right.
And I feel like when it comes to subject matter in these newsletters, that it should come from you all, or at least you all would submit, say, an article from whatever your publication is that goes in along with your profession. If you thought it was relevant and you wanted to highlight it to make sure, like double sure that people saw it, we could put that out.
I think it's just my opinion. It's more effective being a newsletter that goes to the people who are registered, and then maybe some government people who work with people who are registered or might be involved. Or I don't know who all the other list was, but it's the news media is so fractured now. Everybody gets their news from 100 different sources. I just think something that definitely goes directly to our registrant. If you're registered in our state, you're going to get this. It's going to remind you that we have a board. It still exists. There are some rules. Here's the latest changes of what's going on. Just, this year, this is kind of keep you abreast of, they probably nobody knows we're developing definitions right now, or maybe very
Are
few.
you suggesting nobody watches these meetings?
Oh, yeah, the high ratings. I forgot about that. But I think the newsletter format there's a reason why all the states do it. And I think it's a more focused place to deliver the message of, hey, remember this. Specifically, you're the one, remember these little tweaks to the rules. Or
Certainly. And I think things like legislative updates, we can work together along with the ledge team to, we could put some bullet points together. I think if, we've submitted a proposal to the governor's office for consideration, should they adopt that, there would be a prime opportunity, especially since it would change some pretty significant, or make changes in some significant areas, be a prime opportunity to put that out. And we can put that together, but again, I go back to content-wise, we just can't go surfing the industry publications looking for what we think might be relevant without you all submitting that stuff to us.
No, I was thinking more like if we take the last newsletter that we did and say, yeah, we've got the test results, or the people who passed. It was always kind of cool to see your name in the newsletter when you pass the test. Yeah, you guys have that information. Yep, we can put that in and just see what we could. And, I don't know that we need all of this stuff. I mean, I've got this newsletter from Arkansas. I kind of sent Michael the two extremes. The one from Arkansas is 5 pages, and it is bare bones, but it's a newsletter that's got an article by the president. It's got the article by the director, the board director. It's got disciplinary action. It's got congratulations, new licensees. It's got welcome new board members. It's got a little blurb from NCES, and then a calendar of the year events. I mean, it's bare bones, and I would think this is something that could be put together certainly really easily. This was a little longer than I remembered at the Tennessee. And I came away thinking, maybe where we are going is somewhere in between these two. Maybe in there, but I would, I think Roxana could be key to talk to her to see how did all this stuff happen before.
But Roxana had somebody on staff who put that together. There was a paid staff member who did that, and then it was found out that there wasn't enough activity to keep that staff person around, so it's my understanding, mind you, that staff person found another job.
I mean, my opinion is that it'll kind of depend on what the staff is able to do. What you either through the comm department or the staff, whether it's the Arkansas or the Tennessee version or something in between. But I don't know that there's going to be any information coming from the board member, any content much other than an article and maybe finding out what we think we need to write an article about. You know, what do we need to do? Last time Robert and I wrote an article about progressive experience, just trying to explain the concept to help. If you were an engineer and you were hiring young engineers, just to help with that process, you know, you need to be not just doing paperwork, you know, you need to get your young people doing real engineering work. Because we're running into that a lot. And we can come up with the content in terms of an article or two about, hey, what do we think people need to hear about? But all the rest of this data stuff, I think, is going to have to come from the staff.
We have some data. I've never seen a list of people who have passed the exam. I don't think we get that. Caleb, do we?
With landscape architects, that will come from CLARB, and I'm sure NCARB and your all's group too. They're the ones who would say who passed the exams, but they certainly have to pass it on to the state.
Well, no, we get notification of who's passed, and that goes in their file. But then we would have to then generate our own. Like I said, I've never seen a list. So then we would potentially have to generate our own list and keep track of that.
I know that we
print certificates.
Yeah, we get certificates. That must come from some list.
It comes from, yeah.
Is this test, who administers this test? Who's the proctor?
This NCES has hired,
Pearson VUE.
Pearson VUE to give the computerized tests now.
If we give them a time date, they should be able to tell us who passed their exams during that time date, during that rate.
Yeah, I would think all of that results goes back to NCEES, and I think they would have to. I thought they had to report it to the state because I think we get the certificates from the state. You know, when you become a PE,
we send certificates.
So I was assuming there was, maybe it's not a list, maybe it's just data that comes at you one by one.
Well, I think it's one by. I think that I want to say the applicant provides proof of passage.
Is that right?
And and then we have to we go and put it in their file. But it's not like a list from the organization that comes and says all these people passed at one time. See, like I said, we're currently a little thin, but there's a pretty high volume of activity that goes on with this board alone, and our team works on six programs. So I'm not opposed to this, but we're going to have to find a happy medium so that we're not creating extra work for people.
Right. No, well, I mean, if it had to be the Arkansas version, I think that's better than nothing. I mean, I don't need to dominate the conversation, but I think it's important that we have one, have a newsletter at least once a year, and if it were this 5-page version, if that's all we could do staff-wise, I'd say let's do it.
If I may ask, the purpose of this committee is what? In that, can roles be assigned to the committee members? You collect this information, you collect that information, and so forth. I think, I published a newsletter for ASID for, 10 years or so. And information was fed to me from the membership and then I had a template. I spent the time putting it in there, and this was printed and distributed. And there was a dollar amount. There was a budget for it. It just so happens that I had a built-in graphics artist who is my husband, who helped kind of lay things out. And it wasn't, I think we need to, first of all, decide, do we want the newsletter? And I think we agree we want the newsletter. Is it going to be digital or is it going to be print? If it's going to be whatever the format, we need to decide how often. If it's one time a year, then that helps us determine the content. And do we assign, do we hire someone, pay them a dollar figure to generate the template and generate this for a 1-year publication? The next thing is, who develops the content? Where does it come from? For example, and I guess I'm trying to understand the importance of, or the value of stating who passes their exam. From an interior designer's point of view, the CIDQ, do we want to list who has passed the CIDQ, but are they going to register? So who is it that passes the exam, and how do we acknowledge them? And, are we encouraging them to register, or from the interior designer's point of view? So I think there's some basic decisions that we need to make first before we can jump off the ledge and try to figure out where the information comes from. But I do know that it's a valuable tool. I think it would be at least valuable to have it as a digital format, so that not only
certainly be cheaper.
It would definitely be cheaper and a lot quicker.
That too.
You generate your template. It's easier to, and you don't have to proof things. And if you misspell a word, it's going to tell you, pretty fast. But, and so whatever this committee decides to do, I think we need to, take it step by step. And if we need to put a budget, if we need to put a number to it, it's, if we need to hire someone who is a graphics artist that can put this thing together one time a year, it's not going to be that expensive, because if we pull together the information, give them the information in a format where they just clip and paste, then we're good.
Well, I don't want to speak too soon without having spoken to them, but we've got a comms team here that could potentially do that. Now, the way you've all seen the NPS, we get everything's billed. So when we used Maria comes at a cost every time we use her. Legal bills us for that. So we pay those bills, and that comes out of what you see in the NPS every meeting. But we need to coordinate with them and make sure they've got the capacity to do it, and they're not overloaded as well. And there's a number of different things, like you said. I believe, like there's a checklist that has to go down. I put out a newsletter many years ago for another organization I was with, but I didn't put it together. It just came from me.
Yeah.
Right? So other people, there was somebody who designed it. There were people, we pulled articles from financial publications. We got permissions from those publications to republish in our newsletter their items. The only thing I did was conduct an interview every month with a CEO from whatever company we were featuring. So I understand how it works, and there's a lot of different moving pieces. I don't have the capacity or the knowledge to design. I don't know how to use the software.
But there is someone.
There's somebody here who
that
could
do that.
potentially help us, but we need to.
Yeah.
We haven't explored that until we figure out what it is we want to do. We haven't been able to explore that yet, other than just saying, "Do you think you can?" They say, "Well, we kind of need to know what are we working with here."
Right. Well, if there's someone in place that could produce the newsletter, the question then is, how often? Is it only digital, or do we want to print? And what is the content? And then who provides the content?
Oh, in my mind, it's a one-time design. You get a template, and that's it. Maybe you keep that template for a decade, and you decide, oh, this is a little outdated. Let's freshen it up. But it's basically a one-time design, and you just keep filling it out over and over again. Now, like I said, as for content, we can potentially pull some of those data points. We'd have to look into where some of those past data points have come from, because, like I said, up to this point, now mind you, it's a different time period, and I came on in the middle of a pandemic. There's probably a lot of things that happened here that used to happen that I'm not, I just don't understand yet. But that's not to say we can't figure it out. But I think when it comes to content, meaningful content other than data points, it needs to come from you all. You're the experts. You're the subject matter experts. So if there's an article needs to be written or submitted, or you guys will probably have to call somebody and say, can we rerun your article?
I think maybe our gap is it's going to take one person to kind of put the whole thing together. Yeah, there's Tennessee's, there's Arkansas. It's really going to be one person to kind of put the whole thing together. And right now, it's like we're talking, I think it's not clear who that entity is going to be. I don't see that as a board member. I see us as providing some content, but somebody's got to say, okay, all right, this is what, looking at all the past newsletters, this is what we're considering putting in there. That who is that going to be? Who's that overall editor or whatever the right term would be?
Maria's going to be the editor. She's not going to be, but the editor doesn't do anything except look at it and make sure it's good to go.
Okay, editor was the wrong, maybe publisher. No, whoever has the grand coordinating aspects. Okay, we need Steve, you write this article on this, and we can pull this data from what we've got, and we can get this article from Nces.
But honestly, I think that could be the chairman of this committee.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it could. I don't think I'm.
Well, the chairman, like I said, there's nobody on staff knows what's important to you all like you all know what's important to you all. So if there is somebody who's making those requests, it should be one of you. And then we will work with the design people on, if it can be our comms team here, yeah. And I don't want to speak for them because we haven't asked them yet. But again, like I said, we can potentially pull these data points, but the content, the real substance should come from you all.
It's how it's arranged, what's on page 1.
Yeah, we're not
2,
asking for
3.
that. All we need is to just give it to us. Like, if comms can do this and make the template, it'll be easy to figure out where the stuff goes.
I could be wrong, but I would. My guess is that all these other states with newsletters, the board members write an article if asked, and that's all they do. That's all this other content is coming.
Ricky, that's what I'm asking you for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking for you all to provide the content.
Okay, well, that's like one page out of 18 is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to do 18 pages. But, and I'm not saying we need to put out a magazine.
Right.
But what I'm saying is when it comes to relevant content that's regards to your industry, you all need to be able to provide that to us. I'm not saying you all need to put the whole thing together.
Yeah.
But that's what
Yeah.
I've been saying the whole time, is that you all are the subject matter experts. So we're going to rely on you for those feature articles or op-eds or whatever it may be.
That I think is totally reasonable in the way it's happened,
And that's what I think the role of this committee should be. In my opinion, this committee, just like Melanie said, should be the group that vets the content. So if you wanted to submit an article for a newsletter, bring it to the committee looks it over, reads it, and says, good to go or not.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. I just from what I'm seeing, that's kind of, 10%, 15, 20% of what's in a newsletter.
I mean, like I said, if there's somebody out there who's already putting a bunch of this information out, I don't think we should feature information that's already available. And that's where I don't want to get into doing redundant postings or anything like that. So, that's it.
Should we not find out if we already have a template, though? We're talking about somebody developing a template.
Well, it's got the state. I see the department letterhead on it. So the department logo.
It may be done.
So that's exactly.
Yeah.
If the department letterhead, I keep saying letterhead. If the department logo's on it, then somebody's already seen it and approved it many years ago.
Right.
So if we have it, we could potentially just use it.
Like that would be the first. And I agree with you that if we have to pay somebody to put it together, whether it's an in-house comms team or somebody outside, it seems like the money that the board generates from the registrants' dues, that's an appropriate way to use some of that money. A little bit of that money is getting information back out to them that would help them. And so my view, it would be totally appropriate to spend money on a newsletter.
Seems like we just go around in a circle, but I think, in answer to your questions, I think starting out with one a year is great, and digital's fine. I don't think we need to print it. I think the next step may be to ask Michael to try to find out who was involved in printing this or putting this last one together in 2018 when Roxana was here, and who compiled this information that's in it, and then maybe we can go from there. A lot of this information, some of it's going to come from legal because it's disciplinary actions, and I'm sure that can't go in until consent orders are signed, when everybody's agreed to whatever penalty we assessed. And I see some of that in this.
Yeah, we would just get that information's already so on the department's website. It would be from the DAR, the disciplinary action report. So that'd be easy to pull.
Okay.
But that's my point. It's already on the website. It's already published. Do we need to redo it? Because
we've
already
heard
there.
from the board several times that they think the entire board thinks this is important, and a summary of disciplinary action in an email newsletter that goes out to registrants they think is important, because it reminds. There's someone I know in this one that got $500 penalty because they failed to renew. We see that almost every meeting where somebody loses their notice or something. I think it's helpful that we say that, what happened, because it helps people think, well, I better be looking for my registration notice.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting is we could send out every time this board meets, we could send out a paragraph and says, here's the disciplinary report. Like, it doesn't have to be a newsletter. We can do it probably pretty quickly without going through all of it, and we just send the link to what's already out there. If nobody's visiting it, we can take it to them.
Where is it? Where's the information now?
It's on the department's website, but it's a compilation of all regulatory boards. So, I mean, it's not specific.
I've never looked for it. I could find it or not. But I guess if the administration of the department is not interested in us doing a newsletter, I guess they just need to tell us.
It's not that we're not willing to put it out. It's just our business is to process licenses, and like I said, we can pull data points. But I'm asking you all to contribute to the content as the committee.
We can. I think what we've said, we can contribute an article, but the information, we don't have the. Somewhere somebody on the staff is getting exam results. At least they did in the past, and I assume they still get it now. There's statistics about pass rates that are in this newsletter.
And I said we can explore all that and try and find it.
That.
I don't know. Again, it's been years since somebody's put anything out like this, and nobody currently on staff was involved. So for us, it's starting all over. It's starting anew.
Well, and I'm not familiar with staffing situation. The reason my comment about whether the department's supportive or not is if it's something the board wants to do and the department is supportive of it, then you require the staff, or you contract it out, or you do. Let's just. I don't know what your process is, but I work in government too, so I know there's. You don't just snap your fingers and go hire somebody. So
again, I haven't said we won't do it. All I'm asking for is help. I'm asking for your help.
What I'm saying is, I think our help is going to be minimal. It's going to be the whatever maybe a hot topic is that we feel like an article needs to be written. That's
Steve, I haven't asked you for anything more than that.
Oh, well, that's not a problem. But
that's all I've asked you for is content.
Writing an article is not a problem. What I'm talking about is this other information.
And we can find out what we have access to and how we can pull it. But we've not done this, so I don't know the answer. I don't know what the process is. We're going to have to learn that process on our end. I'm not saying no. I'm saying I need your help, and I'm saying we have to learn. But it's not. I don't think it's going to be an overnight kind of deal.
I don't think it is either. So this committee will commit to providing an article for an annual newsletter that will go out by email, digitally by email.
That's what we talked about last meeting. I mean, we can look it up. We'll just figure it out.
Okay.
Together.
Well, I don't know, but
I actually thought we were going to come to this meeting and you all were going to have an article ready. I thought that's kind of where we had left it, but
we can move to that. Is there a topic that is appropriate for a newsletter that might come out next summer?
I think we were looking at after the legislative session, so it would have, I believe let me check my notes.
May depend on what happens in the legislatures, what the article might need to be. If the
I'm not seeing it right off the top. But that was kind of what we discussed in October, which was it'd be appropriate to do it at the end of the legislative session. And I think we were looking at midsummer, June, like sometime around, if everything could be submitted by, was it April? The April meeting, then we could potentially look at putting it out by June.
When is session over?
Usually late April, May. You could look at doing it in June and then putting it out in August.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that makes sense. Because I think typically there may be some things come out of session that might generate an article.
And since digital is the preferred format, then you can have links, that link to the legal components, link people to help them better use the website and access information that, it took us quite some time to try to find the definitions that were on the website, and they were way deep down in something, and and maybe and so the links are going to be helpful. Hopefully definitions will be ready by then. So I see this committee as being able to help define the content. Content will possibly already be on the website, updated, and we give current news. And since we are a joint board, we have 4 disciplines. I think it would be appropriate to have an article from each discipline, maybe not every time. We would need to, for example, after CIDQ may, I can get an article from them, the North Carolina article. There are a lot of things, but I think that we're going to have to work together to put together the content and figure out the general format as far as the presentation. If this template is still available, that would be great. I think it would be a bit overwhelming for it to be 14 pages. I'm not sure that people have the patience, to go through a digital document, 14 pages.
Right.
So for it to be digital, it makes it so much easier, and the ability to change the information quicker is really nice versus the print. So I guess the next step is, Michael, for you to let the committee know who can't, if there's an individual that can be designated, or, you have the comms folks that can do it, can they find the template? When do we need to start feeding information? And once again, if we use that format, it can be flexible as to the number of pages each time. But I do think we need to decide as a committee, we're not going to go more than 6 pages, or is that, it doesn't matter. I was thinking of print. It was like, you got to have this correct number, but with digital, it doesn't really matter. So, do we want to designate a page to landscape architects, engineers, architects, interior designers? Do we want to define those disciplines in the engineering even, further? How do you all perceive that? And I think those are going to be some of the decisions that this committee needs to make, instead of just, saying whatever you think. And once we get that formatted, then once a year we can just feed it.
I agree. And so for now, if Michael can go back and see if he can find a template and figure out the history, and then maybe we come back at our next meeting and we have the committee members have prepared a list of things that we would like to see within that, and we talk about it, we chew on it, and I see this newsletter starting out as fewer pages at first, and then if we have the ability to make them more robust as we go on, then so be it. That would be great. But if not, that's okay as well. But maybe next time we figure out, okay, what do we absolutely at a minimum want in this newsletter? And I like the idea of having a couple of articles written by a couple of us because of our different professions. I think that would be healthy for the newsletter. I'll tell you that for the different states that I'm licensed in, I read the newsletters that are sent to me, and they're all digital, by the way. But I do read them, and I can't really tell you why I'm interested, but I am. You know, there's some good articles in there. I'm just curious how they do things because I'm on our board, you know. But I know that my colleagues are also interested in newsletters. So I am one who would really like to have a newsletter coming from the A&E board. And I'd like to shift gears just for a minute because something that Ricky and I did together, we went to an engineer meeting and presented new licensees their certificates. And I can't tell you how many people have approached me after that and just they were thrilled that we were there and that we did that. And it seemed, you know, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but it's a huge deal.
It was pre-COVID.
Yeah, but it was a huge deal.
It was
to the licensees, the new licensees. So I'd like to continue that type of thing as well.
I agree. I'm guilty in sending Michael it was either a 60 or 80 page newsletter from some state that was like
that's a magazine.
That scared both of us, but I did send Arkansas too, which is only 5 pages, so I was covering the gamut there. Well, I wonder about as far as then us developing potential topics for an article. I mean, if we made a stab at that in this meeting right now, there's some obvious ones, like definitions is one that every single discipline is involved in. And I think registrants are going to wonder did we not really have definitions? Why didn't we, I didn't know that, I think that would be a great article. I just don't know when the proper time. Because it's just something we're developing now.
After
we don't know
passed.
if somebody's going to, shoot it down. So I was thinking, even though that's a great article subject, I guess we can't consider it right now.
It's all timing. You can have the articles written and in the can. And ready to go. I mean, heck, you all could each write an article and bring it here, and we could have 5 articles ready to go for the next 5 issues. But it's got to, time-wise, it's got to work out. So, there's the legislative proposal, there's the definitions, both of which need to be taken care of at other levels before they can be talked about publicly.
Right.
But you can write those articles, and we can just file them. If you all sent us, you all could write an article a week and send it in for all, and we just have a catalog of articles to pick and choose from. But, that doesn't have to be just one at a time.
I definitely think definitions would be a great article. The other would be the alternative pathways, the licensure legislation that we have that we're working on as far as, engineers. It may be, it was something in that last newsletter, but as far as the complaints, we get more complaints about, people late who don't renew their license on time. That probably needs to be an article every single time, or at least, a little box on there in the newsletter. So that, I would say that's something we're facing all the time. So that might be a good article again. Is there anything else? Is there anything on anybody else's mind on this committee that we face all the time that would be a good article.
Those are the ones that I was thinking about too, Ricky. Have hot button topics from your discipline?
Well, I know that, the North Carolina, the bills, the acts, the bills and everything that are being passed in other states. I don't know if that is appropriate to put in this board's newsletter. I just don't know. But it is for interior designers, what happens in other states, legislation in other states, and the status of registration, whether it be Title Acts or Practice Acts or stamping or not. That's always going to be a hot topic with interior designers, but that might be something that needs to stay with the professional organizations and not be part of this.
About the interior architecture.
That could be a topic.
Can you like AP, pull an article from NCARB, AP meaning Associated Press. Can you pull an article? I mean, because for some of these things, it's been written better than we could rewrite it. So I wonder if we could do that, and then maybe we just go easy and just ask the whole board. We're getting ready for something. If you've got something you want to talk about, because it could be. I could talk about diversity in the profession or spotlight Ricky Burr, Ricky you, let's spotlight you or something. But, but if we could, I just wonder if we could do something like that. That one might help us if we could pull from, something that someone's already written than us rewriting it.
I do think we pulled from the whole board as far as authors, because I wasn't on the committee last time I wrote an article. And then our last newsletter has this article about electronic versus digital signatures because it's very confusing. Nobody knows the difference, I don't think, or very few of us do. But this explains it, and that came from an NCES article written by some people in Oregon. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It was a great topic that we had, just kind of mysterious that helped. So yeah, I think those are great points. Steve's allowed to give a report tomorrow in the meeting. You could ask people about article content.
If we did an article about interior architecture, it'd probably be good to have our interior designer and an architect co-author it.
Yes. Good idea.
Have a hot topic, Blair, from landscape architecture?
Not offhand, but I'm sure by tomorrow I have one.
Good.
Okay, well, are we heading in the right direction, Michael, you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy with this conversation about you all taking, feature articles and whatnot. So, and I think everyone on the board should be given the opportunity to decline their invitation to write a feature article.
The way it used to work was, since they're not here, they would be assigned to write an article, and we would just report it at the board.
So what's Rick going to write about?
That's right. He's not here.
Yep, and it appears as though we've got somebody on the comms team who can handle, it's through Emma, but can handle the template design or whatnot. But like I said, we need to pull all the stuff together and get it to them. So I don't know what's the timeline? What would you like the timeline to be? I know we're looking at August, right? So if we back into the deadlines, then let's see, February, April, June. We can have a feature article by June. I'd say we're good to go. Or heck, it'd be better to have multiple so that we can come in here for a future meeting and actually have a conversation over which one we think is more timely or more relevant, or, you know.
What if we see what kind of feedback we get tomorrow from the board on other articles? And I don't know if assignments are made tomorrow or whether that is at the next meeting. I don't know which, but even if hard assignments for articles were made in February, I think you have plenty of time to write them before, by May. Or
since it's a one time per year, I think, and since we are a joint board, I think it would be important to represent all 4 disciplines in the newsletter somehow. If it's just one time a year, if it was 4 times a year or 3 times a year,
right?
Okay, but
that could be accomplished by potentially linking to other articles from industry publications. We don't necessarily have to put them on, but we can say, relevant news regarding interior design.
Yeah.
In which case, I would expect you to submit however many, a couple articles for us to at least put the headline on and the byline and a link and say, check this stuff out. I mean, as opposed to having 4 features at one time, we can rotate the feature but link to other disciplines' publications.
I think that's our easiest pathway, just to fill it up with stuff instead of spending hours trying to write it up. That's our easiest pathway.
Have links.
Yeah.
You got all the sayings, right? If somebody's already said it better,
mean,
copy it. Why reinvent the wheel? All those old adages that,
reference them
that go
and
into place.
give them
Yeah,
all
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so for scheduling purposes, are we meeting again in February?
What do you think?
February, is that what?
Yeah, February of
said?
next year. I mean, I kind of think that unless we have something to review, we could potentially wait until April.
Right.
Yeah.
And then maybe have another meeting in April after somebody's had time to put some pen to paper and establish a thought process.
Good.
I think that the idea will be introduced tomorrow. If hard assignments can be made in February, which we don't need a committee meeting for that, I think that can be at the board meeting.
Now
then a meeting in April.
Well, once this is established and it's an established process, I really think it could become just a full board conversation that comes in under the director's report.
Yeah.
That says newsletter assignment. It could be a standing item on the full board meeting, because we can have this conversation or the full board, or somebody could say, I got something I want to write about. And we may not have to convene the whole committee again until substantial changes are wanted to the newsletter format.
Yeah, we may want one, like you said, either in April or down the road when we're looking at the total format, if we want input on it. But I think if maybe our goal is definite article assignments in February, get the word out tomorrow that's we want some article ideas from people, and assignments will be made in February. Does that sound?
Sounds good. What else? Okay. We'll be adjourned then.
All right, thank you. We can stop the recording. See you all tomorrow morning.
Thank you.